right, y'all, welcome to the work session on Kevin's last day. I did have to get that on recording. I know. So here we go. Yeah, all we have to do is go through the agenda. So we've got A, it's just a time extension for a PUD, recommending approval. I can go on consent. Number one, we've got a PUD and a variance for 102 multifamily units, a childcare facility, and a height exception on Arthur and State. We are recommending approval. There is neighborhood opposition, so we'll be hearing that. Number two, an annexation out on Pleasant Valley, CAR 2142. We are requesting deferral again for that one, so we will not be hearing that. Item 3 is a variance to encroach the side yard setback for parking and drive aisles and to reduce the width of a two-way drive aisle within the C2D. We are recommending approval, and I think we can get that one on consent.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I need to recuse for item number 3 as my office is handling that application.
You got it.
Thank you. Number 4 is a CUP 2167. It's a conditional use permit to convert an existing building into a martial arts studio on Park Center. We are recommending approval, and we can try for consent on that one. Number 5, CVA 223. It's a variance to encroach into the front yard setback for a residential garage on Greenwood Circle. We are recommending approval on that and can try for consent as well. Number 6, CUP 2155 and CVA 2156 is conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment with a variance for the drive-up window to encroach into the 200-foot residential setback. We are recommending approval, but there is neighborhood opposition, so we will need to hear that. Number 7 is a PUD for 16 multifamily units on Etheridge Lane. We are recommending approval on that, but we do have someone signed up to testify, so we'll have to hear it. Item 8 is a PUD and subdivision on Garden Street for 2 single-family homes. Wait, right? Is there 3? There's 3. That's a mistake on there. Apologies, y'all. So it's 3 single-family homes. We are recommending approval, and we can try for consent on that. Number 9 is a rezone PUD and sub for 17 dwelling units comprised of detached and attached single-family homes on Broadway. They're requesting a rezone to R2D. There is neighborhood opposition on that, so we will be hearing that. And last, but certainly not least, is another requested deferral. It's a rezone PUD subdivision on Maple Grove. So we can put that onto another day. So just to sum up, we can try for consent on item A, 3, 4, 5, and 8. We'll be deferring 2 and 10, and then hearing 1, 6, 7, and 9. Any questions? All right.
Sorry, Crystal, we're hearing 7.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Got a little bit of time. See you back here at 6
minutes, right?
Oh,
Minutes.
a minute. Excuse me. Sorry.
The time extension is just standard.
Yep.
Call if anybody can't testify, or we just say we're going to prove it.
Consent.
Consent.
Yep.
Okay. You got it.
Commissioner Mooney.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I got a question about item 3.
Okay.
We're trying for consent on that. I've got a question about the comp plan, specifically the billboard on that property.
Okay.
So I've got a question. So does that mean it's not on consent, or we'll look to see what the public has to say?
Yeah, or we can certainly just, indicate that, we have a commissioner who would like to discuss it, and we can just leave it on the agenda if that's what your preference is.
Yes, please.
Okay. So we'll add 3 to the here list.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. Few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom, but this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedure for public hearings begins with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed then by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, who signed up or on the sign up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it is important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report, and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Squires, Blanchard,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Pinfrock,
Here.
Stanley,
Here.
Mooney,
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, well, let's start out. We've got a fairly full agenda this evening, and we'll start with building our consent agenda. Without objection, I'd like to place the meeting minutes from our February 7, I guess it would be the work session minutes, and our February 7th commission meeting minutes, and then the February 18th commission meeting minutes on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Commissioner Mooney.
Yeah, I've got a question about our minutes regarding the 301 unit development. And it's mostly just a staff question about the sticky interactions that we discussed regarding the transportation path is what we ended up calling it in the minutes on the west side there of that development going up Tribuca Street.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process of going forward with that? Will that be a condition of approval that's coordinated with ACHD? You know, the standard friction between the land use agency and the highway department.
Right.
Commissioner Mooney, that did get added, so it will be seen by city council when it goes to them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to our new business agenda now. First item up for possible consent agenda inclusion is item A. That's PUD 19-40 JB Earl Company at 7201 West Fairview Avenue. This is a time extension, 2-year time extension. Is the applicant here this evening? Either in person or online?
There's a hand up online.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bastian, are you in agreement with this, the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great, thank you. And is there anyone here in attendance this evening tonight here to testify in opposition to this item? Okay. Looks like we'll place item A on the consent agenda. Moving on. Next one up is, I believe, item 4. That is CUP 21-67 ADP Architects at 301 West Park Center Boulevard. This is a conditional use permit to convert an existing building into a martial arts studio located on 0.76 acres. Is the applicant with us this evening? I don't see. Okay, that's fine. Is there anyone here in attendance tonight that would like to testify in opposition to this project? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item 4 on the consent agenda. Next up is item number 5, CVA 22-3, Chaitra Halgan at 2701 South Greenwood Circle. This is a variance request to encroach into the front yard setback for a residential garage. Is the applicant in attendance tonight? There we go. It looks like you're online. Got her. Okay. Let's see her popping up. Halgan, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Sorry, folks, we're having a little technical difficulty on our side. Okay, great. Looks like she is. And is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to testify in opposition to this project? Okay, we'll go ahead and place item 5 on the consent agenda. Let's see. And then I believe up next is item number 8. That is PUD 21-63. And SUB 21-59 at 1501 North Garden Street. This is a conditional use permit conditional use permit for a planned residential development of 3 single-family homes on 0.42 acres. Is the applicant in attendance this evening? Great. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Yes. Okay, great. And is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to testify in opposition to this project? Okay. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and place item 8 on the consent agenda. I believe that does it for consent items.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the minutes from the 5:45 February 7th meeting, the 6 p.m. February 7th meeting, and the 6 p.m. February 14th meeting. Also including item A, PUD 19-40, and item 4, CUP 21-67. Also item 5, CVA 22-3. And lastly, item 8, PUD 21-63 and SUB 21-59.
Second.
Great. Have a motion to approve and a second on the consent agenda. Any discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Paper,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Prince-Brock,
Aye.
Stanley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up, we do have a few items tonight that are requesting deferrals. The first of those items is item 2. Yep, item 2, that is CAR 21-42, Sawtooth Development at the project address is 8710 South Pleasant Valley. This is an annexation of 81.23 acres with an M1DA, within an M1DA zone. They are requesting deferral to April 4th of this year. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that's here to testify on that project and you cannot attend on April 4th? Okay, doesn't look like it. The chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move to defer item number 2, CAR 21-42 to April 4th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to defer. Any discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires. Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And one more deferral, that is item number 10. This is CAR 21-46, PUD 21-67, and SUB 21-62. Rodney Evans and Partners at 3750 South Maple Grove Road. This is an annexation and a conditional use permit and a preliminary plat for 8 acres and 42 detached single-family homes. They are requesting deferral to April 4th, 2022. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that's here to testify in opposition to that project and you cannot attend our meeting on April 4th? Okay, very good.
Mr. Chair.
Well, Commissioner Stead.
I move that we defer item 10, CAR 21-46, PUD 21-67, and SUB 21-62 to April 4th.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to defer to April 4th. Any further discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock.
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, we will jump back into new business now. Our first item this evening is item number 1, PUD 22-4 and CVA 22-2. This is GGLO at 2426 North Arthur Street, a conditional use permit for a planned mixed-use development comprised of 102 multifamily units, childcare facility, and a height exception on 1.14 acres in a C2D zone. And first, we're going to hear from Caitlin Manouge with staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Caitlin Manouge with the Planning Division's Design Review Team. Before you is a planned unit development application for a 102-unit, 5-story multifamily project located at the northeast corner of State Street and Arthur Street. The development uses the housing bonus ordinance incentives in Boise City Code, and 101 units will be income restricted to households earning up to 80% of the area median income. The project is a partnership with the City of Boise, utilizing the Housing Land Trust. The zoning of the subject property and along either side of State Street is C2D General Commercial with Design Review. The land use designation is mixed use, which extends north of the project site. State Street is a designated high priority corridor, and the site is located within a designated area of significant change where higher density developments are anticipated and encouraged to support transit use and surrounding commercial uses. Taft Elementary is located on the east side of the site, and the project will provide a pathway to the existing community garden. The building consists of ground level parking accessed off Arthur Street and primary pedestrian entry to the lobby and a child care center along State Street. The upper floors contain residential units, and the second floor includes a large outdoor courtyard. The project qualifies for the incentives provided by the Housing Bonus Ordinance. The applicant is using the density bonus to achieve approximately 89 units per acre, the additional 10-foot height bonus, and the 30% parking reduction that's allowed by the multifamily standards. The applicant is complying with all setbacks from the current property lines. A variance request is included to allow the building to remain in the proposed location if property lines shift due to right-of-way dedication. And ACHD has required right-of-way dedication to 2 feet behind the 12-foot wide multi-use pathway that's being installed along State Street. The height exception request is to allow an overall building height of 57 feet 6 inches and mechanical equipment and screening height up to 61 feet. The maximum height of the zone is 45 feet, but with the housing bonus ordinance incentive, a maximum height of 55 feet is allowed, except for the 10 feet beyond the north setback. The proposed 61-foot tall entry element is located adjacent to State Street and will have no negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The 2-foot 6-inch height increase for the overall building height is minimal and allows for adequate floor heights and parking garage clearances. The proposed height fits within the anticipated development along the State Street corridor. And additionally, along the north, the applicant is providing an increased setback of 15 feet on the ground floor where 10 feet is required. Written testimony included concerns regarding density and height of the project, as well as traffic and parking. And in addition to the letters in your packet, we did receive an additional email testimony from Catherine Pelizzari that was sent on time but got caught in our email filters. And there were similar concerns in that email to other comments that included traffic, parking, and height. The applicant has designed for efficient use of the site while providing a high-quality design and green space. The density and proposed parking comply with Boise City Code requirements, and the project was approved by the Ada County Highway District. The development fits within the anticipated development along State Street in accordance with the State Street Transit-Oriented Development Plan, the State Street URD Plan, and Blueprint Boise Goals and Policies. Late correspondence received included updated solid waste comments, which approved the solid waste design along Arthur Street, and also an updated ACHD letter that also approved the updated solid waste design. And in conclusion, the project will comply with all approval criteria and required findings in Boise City Code and fulfills the goals and policies in Blueprint Boise, and the planning team recommends approval subject to the recommended conditions. And we also have Deanna Dupuy here with the Housing and Community Development Division if any of you have questions regarding the land trust. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Hi there.
Hi, good evening. I'm Shellen Rodriguez for the record.
Give us your address too, please, while you're out of there.
Yes, with SMR Development, it's 520 West Idaho here in Boise. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us and hearing this important project. Caitlin, thank you very much for the presentation, but also for the staff report. I had the opportunity to read it, obviously, and I think it's very thorough. So I'm going to try my hardest to take the most advantage of your time by not repeating what Caitlin said either in the staff report or in her presentation. So State and Arthur, I'll tell you a little bit about the project. It's 100% affordable, like you mentioned. That means that 100% of the units will serve families making up to 80% of the area median income. What that means in this community right now is a family of 3 would be making around $54,000 or less to qualify to live in these units. Next slide, please. So just very quickly, I'll go over the project as well as a history and timeline, and then, or excuse me, the partnership, history and timeline, and then overall development goals, and I'll be brief. Next slide, please. So the Pacific Companies, Caleb Roop, the CEO, is here in the audience. If you have questions for him, he's the primary developer. SMR Development, joint venturing with him, and GGLO, the partner John Hall, and the project manager Ben White are here today as well. GGLO did the hard work with design. Caleb's doing the hard work with figuring out the financing of affordable housing, which is really like putting together a very large puzzle. But as you can see, all of the entities on this team have quite a bit of experience, both around the country with Pacific. Over 14,000 affordable housing units have been developed by them and are currently owned by them. So they own and operate their units. You see Adair Manor on the top, New Path, the state's first permanent supportive housing development developed by Pacific. The Martha and Ash Street townhomes, both SMR and or GGLO played a role in, which are workforce missing middle units for the community. So of those 14,000 units, roughly 1,500 are here in the state of Idaho that the Pacific Company has developed, constructed, and operates. Next slide, please. Quick project history. I won't go into a lot of detail, but Deanna Dupuy with the Housing and Community Development Department / PDS is here. The city purchased this site back in the summer of 2020 for the purpose of providing affordable housing to the community. They did a community outreach process. Then they did a request for proposals, by which in the summer of 2021, the Pacific Companies, SMR and GGLO, the team that we put together, were chosen to develop this site in partnership with the city. So after that, we did a due diligence process, worked with the site. The city ended up actually increasing the size of the site quite a bit. And now we're here today after the neighborhood meeting and putting together the application. After we move through this, what I would call the entitlement pre-development process, we go into project financing, which will require both public and private financing sources. And then hopefully starting construction as early as the end of this year or this fall, with a 12 to 18 month construction period. Next slide, please. I think you kind of covered this in your proposal, or in your presentation, but you see that the site is on the State Street corridor. It's very close to many of the amenities that the community has to offer. Next slide. You can kind of see in this slide the outline of the purple urban renewal district. I know you all saw it at the end of last year, but it just requires or suggests that this area is an area of change and should be a multimodal transit hub. And so that's what we're trying to promote here. Next slide, please. These are some kind of the existing site. As you can see, it's vacant. Smokey Davis no longer exists there. There's power lines, there's an irrigation ditch. Currently, there's not separated sidewalks on State Street, and there's no sidewalks along Arthur. The colored photograph to the bottom right is an image of the connection that currently exists with the community gardens that's in the softball fields or baseball fields at Taft. That connection did not exist meaningfully when Smokey Davis was there. So that's something that the community has achieved or has acquired, I would say, since the site has become vacant. And I think we heard loud and clear that they really like that connection. Next slide, please. So this slide has a lot of words. I won't read them all to you, but I think the design and development goals were really trying to align with what the city of Boise and the Housing Land Trust requested of us, which was A, to maximize housing, knowing that there was a great need for this type of housing. Items A, B, C, D there kind of speak to that need. Second was just to balance the idea of density and livability, and how do you do that while making a feasible project? So we looked at the urban renewal district, we looked at the neighborhood plan, we looked at the comprehensive plan, and this is what we came up with. And then I think the last point is really just the connection. And when I say connectivity here, I mean not only the connection to area amenities, but also the connection within the development itself. Next slide. So this slide just shows that the different color arrows really help try to communicate not only where sidewalks and pathways will be constructed, but also how folks will interact with the community garden that exists, as well as how students coming from that neighborhood will be able to come down Arthur Street, tuck behind our building into their school field. You can see the orange arrow is a proposed 12-foot wide multi-use pathway. And that was a requirement of the city, and it includes an 8-foot wide landscape area, but it will really provide quite an opportunity to travel along State Street in time on bikes and pedestrians and as a pedestrian. Next slide. This is just the ground floor. I think Caitlin showed you this, but you can see we've got substantial indoor secured bike parking. The orange area represents the 1,500 to 1,600 roughly square feet of daycare facility, as well as the outdoor area that's required to operate a daycare facility, some common spaces, and then the 87 covered parking spots with access off of Arthur. The second through fifth floor, I won't go through all of them, but this is the second floor, and you can see that outdoor amenity that was mentioned previously that will overlook the foothills, but also overlook the ball field, and will include a playground, barbecue area, some amenities for our residents, dog run for pets, etc. some images. You can kind of move through these quickly. And our request, it was outlined very well, but it's that a multifamily project requires a conditional use in the zone. The daycare facility requires a conditional use permit in the zone. We are requesting those height exceptions that were outlined previously, as well as the variance along State Street and Arthur Street to provide both ACHD requirements of the 2 feet additional right-of-way behind the sidewalk and that 12-foot MUP and 8-foot landscaped area. Next slide, please. So we did hear a lot of neighborhood concerns. I suspect we will hear more this evening. And I want to be very straightforward in that it is change. And we did try to meet some of the concerns that we felt we were able to. One of those is that connection between the neighborhood, the schoolyard, and that community garden. The other obvious concern is the parking needs an increased traffic. It is allowable by code, what we're providing and what we're proposing. We do offer as long-term owners, we are able to offer incentives to residents. That was actually brought up in one of the comments. How can you create a community that would use bikes and buses? And so I think we're very open to thinking about that. Building height and scale, it's allowable by code with those exceptions that we're requesting. There was also an interesting concern from a lot of the folks that spend a lot of time at the community garden. There's quite a bit of invasive species and weeds that are kind of taking over the garden. So our landscaping plan addresses that. And we did kind of beef it up to try to address that. I think that's the end of the slides. Is that right? Yeah. So I think I will stand for questions, or another person gets to comment now. I'm not sure the order of the process.
Yeah, we'll do the neighborhood association next, and then we'll have questions. So
Great.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So our neighborhood association for this project is Veterans Park, and I have Katie Decker on the agenda here, signed up.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. My name is Katie Decker. My address is 5001 West Mimosa Street. Okay. And I'm the president of the Veterans Park Neighborhood Association. Can you, oh, there. Okay. I'd like to open by acknowledging that the Neighborhood Association appreciates the many positive aspects of this project and the thoughtful design features that it incorporates. But that being said, we'll use our time today to focus primarily on the areas of improvement that we're requesting. I'm also aware that affordable housing also often creates next slide, please. Often creates a lot of contention. So I want to open just by noting the Veterans Park demographics with regard to income. This project targets an average 60% of AMI for their units. And on the 4-person scale that they referenced, Veterans Park median income would fall at 62% of AMI. The community needs assessment that Boise put together documents that Veterans Park has over 51% of low-income residents. So over 50% of our neighborhood would already meet the income qualifications here. So I want to highlight that our comments are not about the low-income nature of the proposal, just simply the building design. Also, I want to point out that we have to meet the CUP and PUD approval criteria separately from the zoning ordinance requirements. Idaho state law and local Idaho case law both confirm that impacts can still be generated even when the requirements of ordinance are met. So this project qualifies for height exceptions and parking reductions. Both of those I'm pointing out impacts related to them. Next slide. Oh, 2 slides. I'm sorry. Okay. I want to start by addressing the criteria 5 on compliance with the comprehensive plan. So shown here are quotes from numerous places within Blueprint Boise that require developments aimed at increasing density to complement the scale and character of the existing surrounding neighborhood, provide gradual decreases in building heights, and incorporate transitions to adjacent neighborhoods. So we want this development to be incorporated into our neighborhood, and we want it to be designed to be successful. But the proposed 5-story scale of the building simply can't be considered comparable to the adjacent single-story R1C single-family house and zoning. We do know that the original plan for this project was on one large parcel, and they then incorporated a second parcel that had a single-family home on it. When we heard that, we were hopeful that that was to incorporate a terracing down into the neighborhood, but we don't see that in the proposal. So we're here today to ask for that. Next slide. This is a visual from the applicant's proposal that just shows how the five-story building is incorporated with the adjacent residential area. Next slide. There's no proposal to rezone the adjacent area to the north away from single-family homes. And so I think we still need to consider the Arthur Street access, not just the State Street access. I know that the staff report said this is an area of change and it's comparable to what we're expecting in terms of development along State Street. But I think we also need to take into account the Arthur Street access. So this slide is intended to show the shadow generated, which can be considered an impact on the surrounding property. So the yellow figure shows the graphic of the proposed building. You see how it's incorporating the adjacent lot that's currently or used to be a single family home. And then the red area shows shadow generated at solar noon. Solar noon is the point in the day when the sun is at its highest, so the shadow is the smallest. So this represents the smallest shadow at various points in the year. So in the light red far to the left, you see the maximum extent of the winter shadow, and that covers almost 2 properties. It's probably 80% of the second property to the north. And then the darker red is the average shadow over the course of the year. You'll see that that covers most of the adjacent property to the north. I think it's a 75-foot property frontage and it's 65 feet of the property. And again, I'm bringing up the Boise's draft zoning code rewrite, which is not an applicable standard here, but it is an independent acknowledgement that building scale can create an impact on the neighborhood. So it includes a building height step down section that says, in order to minimize the impacts of multifamily mixed use development on abutting lower density residential zoning districts, and they provide 2 techniques, one of which is to step down the building to a maximum of 35 feet in height within 100 feet of any R1C lot line. So the lot that it incorporates is approximately 75 feet. So you can see within the building where that 100-foot, 75-foot mark would be. Extrapolate. Next slide, please. Now, I also want to bring up a parking impact, which I think is related to the intensity of use that the height generates. So in fact, by reducing the height and reducing the number of units, if you kept the parking the same, that might alleviate this impact already. Right now, the applicant has qualified for several parking reductions, but again, we need to look at impact, not the ordinance. And that means that they're proposing 87 units to cover 87 parking spots to cover 102 residential units, which include some 2 and 3 bedroom units as well, and the daycare traffic. So it's significantly lower. I just note that on a personal level, I'm a bike commuter, we're a 1-car household, and I wanted to be a no-car household, and we're not able to manage that in Boise. So I do also envision a future where we don't need a 1-to-1 parking ratio, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. And now this is illustrating that on Arthur Street, it's a very narrow street. So I just copy and pasted the cars shown in that parking lot and put them on the street to show what the remaining travel area is. This is also the sole route for pedestrians and bicyclists to access state because it's a very poor grid pattern in the area. So in this narrow remaining corridor, you have 2-way vehicle traffic, pedestrians and bicyclists. There's no sidewalks on Arthur. I think that you could redesign Arthur and do more infrastructure and make 1-way traffic, but that's not part of this project. So I think that as designed, we would need to request more parking, a higher parking ratio. Next slide, please. With regard to State Street, This is a screenshot taken from the Arthur Street through U. It shows that there's a solid barrier across the median. So left turns from this site are prohibited. That means that you can't get to downtown easily. It's my understanding that a lot of the existing residents turn right and attempt a left turn across traffic. The other option, next slide. The other option is a rather indirect route through neighborhood streets. So to that first intersection, that's Bush Street. That's the equivalent of approximately 4 of the smaller scale residential blocks that you see in the adjacent Sunset. From State Street to there, that section is the section that doesn't have any sidewalks or other infrastructure improvements. And obviously you're also going by Taft School if you take the Bush route. So my main comments are with, next slide, please. So my main comments are with regard to the building height and the parking impact. I also think that this will impact traffic patterns, and I don't see that being something that is within the applicant's ability to change. But a reduction in scale of the project would also reduce the impact accordingly. And finally, I want to make a quick note. I provided in my written comments a copy of the original bid review process that showed at least 3 of the members of the original bid review panel commenting on the large scale of this project being difficult to consider comparable to the existing area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Okay, go ahead and open up this item for questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I have a question for the neighborhood association. I wondered, would the step down solution resolve or remove the shadow that was being cast on the neighboring property?
It depends where you put the step down. It's kind of an infinite layer. So right now the building height is 57.5 feet and the maximum shadow is approximately double that. So every foot you step down brings the shadow 2 feet in.
Got it. Thank you.
And it also depends how far you take the step down back. Like conceivably you could like if you put just one set of units, then you would probably have a similar impact on the adjacent property because you're not stepped back far enough.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have one more question, if that's okay.
Please, Commissioner
Sure.
Stead.
This is actually maybe for the applicant. It's about the daycare facility. Is it restricted just to residents? And can you remind me of the number of kids?
Thank you. You're really tall. It will not be restricted just to residents. We don't have an operator yet. Neither Pacific nor SMR are daycare operators, but the way that the condition currently reads is based on city code. I think we can have up to 28 kids in that facility,
Great.
and that may change based on whatever the state code is at the time that we actually get the building up and operating.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
I've got a few questions if I can. First one for staff. Can walk me through this variance? Because I'm a little confused. I'm reading through it and I think I got it, but if you wouldn't mind just being crystal clear on exactly what we need to decide on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley. So the variance is to accommodate when ACHD requires dedication of right of way, that property line moves back. So moving that property line back would change your setback. So instead of having to move the building back to accommodate that right of way dedication, they're asking for the variance.
So the hardship is essentially because ACHD is requiring a setback for their right of way. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, I would say there's an exceptional circumstance in that the actual location of the building will not be impacted. So they're complying with the setback as it currently is with the property line locations. And they only visually, nothing will change. It's just that that property line will be in a different location.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Yeah, please.
a couple more if I can. To the applicant. So going on the shade discussion, the play area that's being proposed seems to also be in that general vicinity where certainly in the PM hours, when I would assume more playing is likely, it seems like that's pretty concentrated to where it's going to be shaded almost the entire time. I mean, is that accurate?
Commissioner Danley, can we, or Caitlin, can we go back to a site plan image perhaps? I just want to confirm that you were talking about the amenity for residents. Maybe
Yes.
maybe the second floor plan would be better. Yep. Great, thank you. It's still kind of hard to see, but in the upper right-hand corner, that second floor plan,
Right.
there's a variety of amenities that we're showing up there, and you are correct in that I think that the playground for the community is on the far left or the north side of that open space. If we have flexibility in our minds as to where we put the barbecue area, the dog run, the playground, but it is something that we like to provide for our residents, as well as some of those amenities are requirements of our financing. So if the request would be to move that over to the more southern or easterly side of the open space, I think that would be amenable.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, one last question, if I may. This is to staff. And so Caitlin, on the letter that we got with regard to the forestry, it was I don't recall seeing this type of language in here before, but the proposal for the ash tree and this pest and this emerald ash borer, they were great concern of them seeing that on the proposal. Has that been resolved?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, yes, the applicant will just switch out that tree.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I had, there was one image in our packet, and I think you had it in your presentation as well. It was the HBO exception area. It was on the height exception request slide. So there's a little section shaded in green on that west facade. Is that an area where it's meant to be, not meant to be at 55 feet?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, so that little section that's green is the part that's the exception from the height bonus. So the allowed height in the zone is only 45 feet. So that there would also be requesting the height exception from that for that little area there.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
And I think this kind of follows up on that. There was, in one of your earlier slides, there was some kind of language about the height increase, except 10 feet beyond the setback. And I think the way it was worded, it's like in that slide number 6, right at where you're showing. Yeah, except for 10 feet beyond the applicable setback. So if the setback is 5 feet, then it's 5 plus 10. Is that how it's reading?
So the setback is 10 feet on the ground floor and then 15 feet on the upper floors. So it would be 10 feet beyond both of those. So on the first floor, they're not up to the height max yet, so it's not applicable. But on those upper floors, when they get to past 45 feet, they can't use that 55 height bonus within 10 feet beyond that 15-foot setback.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Mooney, thanks for your patience.
Hi, Mr. Chair, thank you. This is a question for staff regarding parking. So the way I understand it, the childcare requires a conditional use based on that activity, but retail is an approved activity in that area. So if a childcare facility is not the resident of that space in the building, what's the parking requirement for retail?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, the parking requirement for retail is 1 per 300 square feet. So they would need to redo that calculation if a retail use was going to move into that area.
Okay, follow up on that then. So but we don't know what's going in there. We're planning for a childcare facility with reduced parking, but worst case is what's in the code, what's currently allowed, which is retail, which would be, it sounds like significantly more parking required.
Correct.
true?
There would be, yeah, correct. Additional parking would be required if it was to be a commercial space. The childcare use requires 1 space per 10 children. So at 28 children, it's only 3 spaces.
And the retail would be 1 per 300 square feet, which equates to how many more spots parking?
I believe that space is currently about 1,800 square feet. 6 spaces.
Okay. Mr. Chair, a follow-up or a different question regarding the variance.
Please.
The way I've understood variances in my short time is that it's generally for topography, unusual circumstances for the parcel. And in this case, the ACHD right-of-way could have been known, because it's now known, it's in the project, it's on our report here, that they insist on that offset. So the given is this is a flat piece of ground with an existing property line that ACHD is now defined as the public right-of-way. When we say in the staff report that the resulting impact would significantly reduce the number of affordable housing units, and the current design maximizes affordable housing units, for our deliberations, what's the difference between if this building was constructed without the variance, what would that be in reduction of affordable housing units? We don't have that information, do we?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, correct. We don't know that exact number. I'm not sure if the applicant knows that exact number.
You want to give it a try, Ms. Rodriguez?
Sorry, it's a dramatic pause. I would say, I don't know for certain, but I think there's a handful of variables that are at play. If we're just talking about the variance of the 5 feet on State and perhaps on Arthur, that would take away almost 2 bays of parking. So if you go to the parking site plan, yeah, I mean, it would cut in to a substantial portion of the parking affecting turnarounds. I mean, at the end of the day, if you take out a bay of parking, you're going to lose the equivalent amount of units. And then in response to the height exception, we did do some work on our end with our design team, and having to do any sort of step back for the purpose of shadows or even for the purpose of additional setbacking on the ground floor, we would lose an entire set of units essentially for all floors above, depending on where you requested that setback from, if it makes sense. So we're talking 4 units on each floor. So anywhere from probably 10 to 16 units would be decreased. So if I may, the way that we think about that is, although the shadows are an issue and maybe perhaps would affect somebody's garden or perhaps there's wait list of years longs for families that are working in our community who can't find housing. So it's the units or the setbacks, if that answers the question.
Mr. Chair, follow up regarding the variance.
Yeah, please.
So for staff, if the variance regarding the ACHD piece of it stands, then how would that affect adjacent development? Will they be in the same pickle, so to speak, for future development? Having to work this out, or how will that streetscape and all the plans that we have for State Street be affected?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I don't believe the adjacent development will be as affected, just because this building takes up the majority of the site, and then they have their fire access along the back as well. So they're pretty tight, just given kind of the orientation of the site and trying to fit access behind there for fire. But I think if some of those other parcels along State Street redevelop, I don't think we've had any issues. We had the Einstein's Oilery redevelop across the street along State Street, and they were able to accommodate the right-of-way dedication along there. So I think it's really just that the site kind of is in a strange configuration where they don't really have a ton of room along State Street to work with. It's kind of pinched where the building turns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Danley? Yeah.
Quick question, and this is actually for Mr. Pui. You're here, you might as well jump in here, right? My quick question is, I'm just curious, is there a set time for the 80% AMI contractually with respect to the land trust and the ownership of the building and all that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, how we're working with our land trust, we sign SMR and the Pacific companies will sign a long-term lease with the city. We're still working through that negotiation. Our previous land trust property signed a 75-year lease, and there was requirements for affordability throughout the life of the ground lease. The Pacific companies have made every intention to apply and receive low-income housing tax credits, which also come with its own set of governing documents about affordability levels, property management, tons of requirements about how to treat its residents and for an extended amount of time.
Thank you.
I've got one question, Caitlin, I think for you. Kind of I guess, simpler maybe in scale, but the 12-foot pathway on State Street, the multi-use pathway, is that something that I'm thinking about other adjacent properties in State Street corridor itself. Are we looking at a 12-foot pathway for that entire corridor? Is that the long-term goal?
Mr. Chair, correct. We would envision the 12-foot multi-use pathway all the way along State Street.
Okay, I mean, detached in this condition. So this is the condition that the city is envisioning for that entire corridor, essentially.
Correct. There may be some flexibility in the design. Sure. We might have some sections that are detached with trees and tree grates, for example.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, last call for questions. Commissioner Mooney, your hand's still up, so I'm just going to check in with you real quick. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore, yeah.
One last question. So on, and this is a question for, I think, the applicant. So on the north elevation, it's showing some balconies and some large windows that are going to overlook that adjacent site. Was there any consideration to maybe some clear story windows? I think looking at the floor plan, those are actually units and they're the only windows for those units, but was there any discussion about clear story windows or some mitigation of looking into the adjacent neighbor's yard?
Commissioner Moore, when you say clear, what do you mean by the windows?
The upper windows that you can't really look out of, they're just kind of there for light, as opposed to kind of full windows that
on the northern side, there should be full windows. I think there's some balconies there that were in question as to whether or not our neighbors would want balconies there.
Yes.
So they do have full windows.
And
or if they don't, they should.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
And I think the primary question is, is there consideration for kind of higher windows or something that might provide some of those smaller residents to the north some privacy?
We have not considered that at this time.
Okay, last call. Okay, Great. Thank you all for answering questions. We'll go ahead and open this item up for the public hearing at this time. Got a few folks sign up. They're in attendance here this evening. I got Dave Haas, Justin Foster, Rebecca Haas, and Dawn Cunningham all signed up here. You guys all would like to come on up to the podium here. We'll start with Mr. Haas, and Mr. Haas, if you can have 3 minutes, and please start with your name and address for the record.
My name is Dave Haas. I live at 2514 North Arthur Street, Boise.
Maybe raise the mic up just a little bit there, please.
Sure.
Just so everybody can hear us at home. Thank you.
That better?
Yep.
Okay. I've lived on Arthur Street since 1959. I used to live at 2502, and then we built a house next door. Arthur Street used to be a dead-end street. Was great. And then they built a big subdivision down, which was fine. I didn't mind. The whole thing about the traffic is a big issue for me. There's a lot of kids that use that street to go to school. One of the things that I see on a daily basis is people traveling up that street too fast. So with all the units that they're putting in, I'm not in favor of that many units. I'm all about low income. When I bought my house, it was low income. And a lot of the neighbors down there were the same. And we've lived there for 40 plus years. I think affordable housing is a great idea because Boise is just growing like nobody's business. And but I think that project is a little too big for Arthur Street. It doesn't fit. It's 5-story. It's not going to fit in the neighborhood. The buildings around it across State Street are smaller. Valor, the veterans housing over there, is only 4-story, and it's a lot smaller. And it's nestled in between a couple of commercial businesses, and it looks okay. My other concern is the setback from the 2502 property. What is the distance that the building will be from the property line?
Sorry, we can't actually answer questions right now.
Okay, that's all right. No worries.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a big concern for me because we're in the, as they talked about, we're in the shadow part of that. And that has a big concern. I'm against putting balconies on the north side of that altogether. Our privacy is, paramount in this situation. And I feel that balconies would just be a bigger infringement on it, along with the 5 stories that we're going to have. I would like to see them address something in the, I know they're going to put up a fence or they're going to put up shrubs or whatever, but we're talking about a 57-foot building. And so that's not really going to do much for us at ground level. The other thing that I have a little bit of concern about is we've maintained that property that where the existing house is that Gary Davis owned. And we had it surveyed before you guys actually bought the property. And we found out.
I'm sorry, Mr. Haas, your time is up.
No worries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Next, Justin Foster.
Justin Foster, 2502 Arthur Street.
Go ahead.
So that is an unimproved road, like everybody's mentioned. It's probably not wide enough for 2 cars and a bike to be on there at the same time. And that's a lot of traffic. If you go out around Bush, like they were saying, the back way out around Taft, that is actually a school zone. It's a bus loading zone back there. So in the mornings and in the afternoons when the kids get out of school, you're going to put all those cars down there while the kids are trying to get on the bus and leave. It's just not, it's not going to work. It's clear to see. And I live next to where the building is going to go up. So I can't see having 365 days of shade in my yard. Like, doesn't work for me. So And how are they getting across? So on a C2, you're supposed to be able to use, it's 1.5 of the area. So you shouldn't be able to build on the whole area. If they're going to go 5 stories, they should only be able to build on a quarter of that area. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay.
I'm opposed to it completely.
Okay, thank you. Up next, Rebecca Haas.
I'm Rebecca Haas. I live at 2502 North Arthur Street, the house that would be right next to the proposed apartment complex. I've lived in this house for almost 20 years, but I've lived on Arthur my whole life. I think the opposed apartment complex in the Old Smokies lot is too much. You will block out our home from the sunlight. When we open our windows, we will no longer have sunlight. Instead, we'll get to see an unnecessary giant apartment complex that will severely decrease the quality of our lives, only to benefit you. It is stated in the Veterans Park Neighborhood Plan that the city of Boise will be encouraging growth in adjacent areas without negatively impacting the existing area. So you can't tell me this monster of a building will not negatively impact our homes. What about living right next to it, or should I say under this skyscraper they propose? And if you say it won't negatively impact us, maybe you should build it next to your home where you live. It is not that I'm against the idea of low-income housing. I'm against the idea of it towering over our homes and being too much for our neighborhood. There are other places to build like that, such as downtown, where these buildings belong. There are no 5-story buildings outside of downtown that I know of. Hold on, we're almost done. So don't start here over our residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, I'm Don Cunningham, 2427 Arthur. When I first heard about this was through a survey that we took several years ago. It was questioning us about whether we liked stucco, if we liked, park benches and stuff for a 3-story housing project. Everybody wants housing for as many people as possible. My question is, how did it go from 3 stories to 5 stories, expanding on another lot that you'll have to tear down a viable house that just got remodeled in the last 5 years? What was the point of the survey? And how did it go that way? And another point, how come it's going north-south? It's going into a neighborhood as opposed to east-west. There's a tobacco beer store that they could tear down and go east-west more on State Street, protecting the school from a highway. That's one idea. And if you're going to have a height variance, why not go on the original footprint closer to State Street? Use that, if they got to tear down the house, use that house as a off-street visitor parking, access to the school, access to the community garden. The street is very narrow, so if you have to widen the street, I can look at the oil changing store where they expanded the sidewalk off of State Street. If they expand that through my property, I will have probably about 15 feet between my house and the sidewalk. There's no room. You could have found a better site, I think, if you wanted something this big, like the Bluebird car wash site. Huge. The Idaho Department of Transportation has 100 acres up there. They're probably holding it for something else, but that's another place. And like Becca said, there's nothing this tall between downtown and, I don't know, Ontario. It's just out of character. And it's, like I said, what bothers me is it's going north into the neighborhood. The only entrance to this parking garage is directly across from my house. So I guess I better get some heavy duty blinds because there's going to be headlights, sirens, police, not because of the character of the residents, just because you're stuffing 103 units into a tiny site. At the prior meeting I went to at the school, the applicant said that they made it huge because that's the only way it was viable. Well, I'd like to just point out that maybe it's not viable for this site unless you rein it in a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. If there's anybody else, that's it for the folks that signed up ahead of time here in person this evening. If they could testify on behalf or on this item, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please go ahead and raise your hand. We'll start with the folks that are in person here, and then we'll go to the folks online.
My name is Bobby Aitchison, and I live at 3019 North 35th Street. Dr. Susan Williamson, a beloved educator and then principal of the Taft Elementary School, built an urban garden sanctuary in 2010 with over $50,000 in community contributions. In 2019, when my son was in elementary school, I discovered a 7,000 square foot shoulder-high weeds in the back of that school. And I stopped counting at 1,000 hours of community volunteer service and $8,000 in donations to rehab that garden. The community cares about that garden. It's a school community partnership, and the partnership works like this. The school owns the property, the community does all the work. And so the community has to be able to get there. We have to get to that garden. And so I'm going to say I'm in favor of this project. I'm not opposed, but I have concerns that I hope that you'll consider. And I do thank the project for providing the access path to the garden. And I thank them for considering the invasive species, because that's something we struggle with. And they've been very concerned and near as I can tell, responsive to that. So they've done a lot of things right. But here are my remaining concerns. A garden can't grow in the shade. And so there are shade concerns also for our garden. And we can't garden if we can't get to it. And where can people park? And the gardeners tend to be, I hate to say it, but little old ladies such as myself or older. And gardening takes you got to haul a lot of things, bricks, rocks, dirt, pumpkins. And so we need a way to get in and get out of that garden. And, parking is really a problem, because if you start with 60 and you take away 3 for the daycare and you take away 2 for the staff of the property, you got 55. And if you have 102 units and there's 2 people living in those units, it's like, I don't know about the special conditions they have, but common sense tells me that's a lot. And if you look at any of the surrounding roads, there is no other place to park. So our gardeners will add to the problem that will already be there. Another couple of personal things that I have that have nothing to do with the garden is that the visual access that all of those people will have looking down into a schoolyard, I worry about that. And I shared in the neighborhood meeting my concern of I don't know, folks looking down there who don't necessarily need to be doing that. I think if they stay there low income, I hope that there's some way to really make sure that it's low income, that we're not just talking about 80% AMI, but we are talking about, as they said, 10 units for the 30% AMI and those lower folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Harris. I live at 3019 North 35th Street. I'm a co-coordinator of the Taft Elementary School garden with Bobby. We've been running the garden for 4.5 years now, getting ready to start again. And it's kind of an emotional thing for me. Urban sprawl exists. We know, we've watched it. I've been an Idaho resident off and on my entire life. We can't stop it, but we can do what we can to make the impact less. I've been running the community garden. It was, it was Dr. Susan Wilkinson's dream as the principal of that school to create a common space for people can come and garden and work with children. And, I think about this, we live in a very historic part of Boise. I've known that neighborhood literally since I was a young kid, even though I grew up in Caldwell. My great uncle and aunt lived in the North End. I've known about the North End my entire life and moved there in 1983. So, but this structure does not fit the vibe of State Street. It will be the second tallest building on State Street that exists. The Mirror Building and it.
That will be the two tallest structures. You look at firefighting, ladder trucks, it will make a nightmare for that. But when it comes back down to the need of a community garden, we have to think about the children that go to Taft Elementary School. It has a huge refugee population that we love working with. We, farm kids from Idaho, get to teach these young kids how to plant a garden, how to harvest a garden, how to eat food off of the vine without going home and cooking it, without washing it. You just eat it right off the vine. And if that community garden dies because it's now shaded by a building that's 5 stories tall, it's going to be very detrimental to the spirit of the school, the Taft Garden, and of course of Dr. Williamson's dream will be crushed. So it's more of an emotional thing for me. I love working with kids that can't speak English, that we have to have an interpreter, but yet months later we have 50-pound pumpkins, 20-pound pumpkins, tomatoes, all those things that we redneck Idaho kids that grew up on a farm, we need to teach the next generation, because we are looking at a food crisis across the globe. If we can't teach kids how to plant garden, they will go hungry. So that's all I have to say today. Like I said, it's more on the emotional side. And I do appreciate somebody trying to find a way to create low-income housing, because we need that desperately in Boise. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, I think that does it for the folks here in person. We'll go ahead and run down the list for the folks online now. Like Mr. Michael Titmus.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, if you can start with your name and address, please. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Michael Titmus, 3900 Pine Avenue. They're correct to say that this neighborhood that's behind this development is low income. The average house size here is 1,100 square feet, some 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms. At best, they'll have a 1-car garage. In order to make up for more square footage, they are turning those 1-car garages into living space. So you can imagine that even people that live here and work from these homes are parking on the streets. Now, I can't emphasize enough what impacts that's going to make through the neighborhood. It was mentioned briefly that when you go on Arthur and you're trying to get on State Street, you can only take a right. What people are doing is when they take a right, they immediately get in the center lane and then turn into an auto body shop parking lot in order to then get back on State Street to head downtown. That's not ideal. Or they would have to go up to the next light and then go into that neighborhood and then do a U-turn in that neighborhood to go around. The alternative is then to backtrack through my neighborhood. And as they showed, that Bush Street is the closest one, but it wouldn't be the one people use. Bush Street is a curved street and has a lot of on-street parking, people that regularly park their daily drivers on the street. So they use my street, which is Pine. Pine is a straight shot from Arthur over to the 36th and then down to Sunset over to 36th Street. I'm sorry, 38th Sunset, then 36th Street, then take a left on State Street. That did not used to go through to Sunset and past Taft Elementary School. There used to be barriers there. They opened them up last summer. And so I've seen the traffic going from people that want to get from Arthur over to get left going downtown. I can't say orders of magnitude more people driving down my street, which no one had any reason to until last year. Now we're providing over 100 reasons for people to then drive down that street because they can't take a left on State Street. I would second what was said about parking. They're making exceptions on top of exceptions to pack as many homes in there as many units as possible. And although I am sympathetic to density, we need that. I don't think we need to give every exception for that. Whatever constraints they had, I think the real number for maximum for parking would be if they eliminate all the exceptions. I think there's something to say. We haven't seen a plan for it where shadows do lie over that garden. So that should be considered as well. The daycare facility, they had mentioned the benefit of places to park bicycles. Okay. The bicycles are an exception. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmis. Up next, Patrick Spouts. Mr. Spouts, you'll have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Thank you so much. Patrick Spouts, 753 West Sandstone, Boise, 83702. I'm excited to call in and strongly in favor of the project as presented. I'm excited that around 100 families will get a chance to live in a place probably more affordably and closer to where they want to be than any other option that could be provided to them. There's a handful of people calling in today with specific points of opposition, but we're not going to hear today, almost certainly, from any of the 100 families or so that would benefit from this project. And that's a challenge in these kind of debates, where if this building existed and we were thinking about cutting it back and then these people would lose their home, that would be, they would have strong feelings upon that and they'd be missing out. But at this point, the people that may ultimately get to live in there don't even know that that's the option that may be denied to them, based on this not moving forward or not getting financing, not getting built, or cutting down 10 units here or 10 units there. So we have such a compelling housing need, so many families in deep need. I think this is really one of the best projects I've seen that I wanted to call in to support at Planning and Zoning, and I'm really glad to do so today. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Justin Snyder. Mr. Snyder, if you can start with your name and address, please. You'll have 3 minutes to testify.
Hi, I'm Justin Snyder. I live at 2905 North 38th Street, and I am calling as a close neighbor of the proposed project. I drive by it several times a day to speak in favor of it. It definitely supports our State Street Transit Corridor plan with more density. We're seeing the fact that we have such an affordable housing crisis in our city and our state. I think that the focus on building more is definitely much needed, as well as the fact that I myself am a childcare facility owner, so I know that we need a lot more childcare available in our city, and I would love to see it added in this area. It would be very encouraging to see all efforts possible to make that happen. In response to some of the points that have been brought up, now that 38th Street just opened up recently as a more of a through street, it's a lot easier for us to avoid that kind of weird turnaround on State Street that was caused with the new U-turn system that they put in there a few years ago. I guess that's it with acknowledgement of certainly some of the impacts that I think that this will have on our neighborhood. I do urge you to approve the project, potentially with updates like stepping that have been proposed to decrease its shadow to the north. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, is that Leo Cardoza? Apologize.
Yes, you got it on the first try.
All right, great. Go ahead, Mr. Cardoza. You have 3 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also in support of building additional affordable housing, and I also echo the VPNA's concerns about the size and impact of this project. I'm disappointed by the staff's conclusion that this project will not negatively impact adjacent properties. Parking, traffic, and pedestrian safety and the building shadow all represent negative impacts on adjacent properties. I live, by the way, at 2519 North Arthur Street, about 225 feet from the proposed location. As has been stated previously, the street is already narrow and lacks sidewalks. And by my calculation, between the existing use by residents on this street for street parking around their houses, because as been stated, most houses do not have wide driveways. My wife and I generally park one of our cars on the street because our driveway is not wide enough to fit both of our cars next to each other. So with the 23 residences between the proposed location and Bush Street, between their needs for street parking, their needs for trash removal, adding what we have to assume will be an additional 20 cars without homes, because I do not for a second believe that anything less than an average of at least 1 car per dwelling unit is reasonable to expect. So there, you're talking about adding 20 additional cars, which if we park them on both sides of the street will extend all the way up to Bush, and that makes it an unsafe place for 2 cars to pass each other. So if we only park on one side of the street, then that extends parking all the way up to Pine. So parking is a major issue. Again, having more cars parked and more traffic traveling up the street means more of a safety impact. And Mrs. Rodriguez's repeated statements that these issues are allowed by code does not negate the possibility of that negative impact. That's why this review process exists. I thank Commissioner Mooney for pointing out the inadequate parking for the child care facility. Anybody who is not living in the building and is using the child care facility will have no choice but to pull onto Arthur and either street park or park in the Valvoline parking lot or by the new wash and dry center in order to deliver their children and walk across Arthur Street in order to drop off and pick up their children. One idea off the top of my head is redesigning this building so that the community garden in the building is on the north side, then you achieve the step down and decrease the shade issue. The impact of driving on State Street has been mentioned. I have lived on the street for 10 years, and on a regular basis, I make the rather precarious exit turning westbound onto State Street and then having to pull into the middle lane and pull a U-turn in order to go eastbound. Or since the traffic's opened up on 38th Street, I've more often traveled up that way, but then I'm driving through a school zone while kids are going to school, and increasing traffic through either of those areas is not a good idea for safety. Ms. Rodriguez's presentation included a very useful illustration of the surrounding area and the amenities in the neighborhood. It also usually.
Thank you, Mr. Cardoza. That is your time. Okay, up next, Alexandra Monjar.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Monjar. I live at 2222 West Kootenai Street in Boise. And I would like to support this project. I believe that it will have a positive impact to the adjacent properties. It's building streetscapes along the street that lacks infrastructure, as has been mentioned. It will mitigate displacement in this neighborhood, which is, as mentioned, home to many families who have incomes in line with the incomes that this project will serve. As we are going to see increasing development in this corridor, affordable housing becomes even more important than it already is, and keeping 100 families securely housed in an area close to transit is exactly in line with the city's goals and in line with the plans for the area. It will also maximize the return on public investment in this area as State Street is improved and the VRT transit line serves this community. It will also bring more neighbors to the neighborhood, and which brings more eyes on the street, which is good for safety, it's good for community, and I think these things are benefits of the project for the community. I think that the height exceptions are very reasonable and allow for a more visually pleasing design with the varied facade. I also think that the step backs would likely result in a need to reduce a number of the larger units, which I think is a major problem. We need affordable housing for families, and those extra units or extra bedrooms in the homes are really important for families. And so reducing the size of this project, I am concerned that it would reduce the availability of housing for families in need. I also believe that shallower setbacks make for a more comfortable pedestrian environment and would have the added benefit of slowing traffic coming off of State Street onto Arthur. I know that cars and traffic suck, but we are never going to get to a better place if we keep regulating parking for the desire that exists currently. So I do not think that there should be any sort of increase in parking requirements. And I respectfully suggest that if homeowners are concerned about people parking on the street and they do that, then they can build another garage or more parking pads for themselves. And that is all of my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And looks like last but not least, we have Eric Willitson.
Am I on? Oh,
You are.
okay.
Hello.
I'm Eric Willitson at 4906 West Wymosa Street in Boise, Idaho. I'm in the Veterans Park neighborhood, although on the opposite corner of where this development would be. I just wanted to call in and voice my support for the project. I think it's in line with City of Boise plans and State Street Transit Plan. And I really like that this project is bringing more affordable housing to a functioning public transit system with the State Street public transit, or, with the VRT State Street route. And then I also like that there's really great accessibility to active transportation corridors. Most of us know that north of State Street is pretty safe for walking and biking. The Greenbelt is also just right over the other side of State Street. I think one thing I wanted to raise awareness about is just this idea around like congested streets. We know statistically that congested streets are safer for cyclists and pedestrians. Generally, they slow down traffic. And so I'm not super concerned about, I think safety for cyclists and pedestrians on Arthur Street will actually improve if some of these concerns around parking on the street and such do come to materialize. And then also, I'm really supportive of just like how having greater housing stability leads to greater social capital, especially for low income residents who really need access to this right now. We know that affordable housing and a lack of affordable housing in Boise is a huge concern. We need more units for people to live in. And being able to have that stable housing, I think, is really imperative. Just a couple of months ago, a family who's been living across the street from us had to move due to rising rent prices. And that was they were very like active and engaged with people here right on our street. And it was sad to see them go. And I just think that like having had an opportunity for a family to stay put in the neighborhood that they've lived in and invested in helps them in the long run. It helps the neighborhood in the long run. And it creates a safer and more vibrant community for everyone. So that's it. I'm just in full support of the project. Thanks for giving me the chance to comment tonight.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else online that would like to testify? Okay, it's like Mr. Zimmerman has his hand up. Good. Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, can you hear us okay?
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, yes. We can start
All
with
right,
your
sorry
name and
about
address,
that.
please.
Hi, my name is Gary Zimmerman, and I live on Plum Street in the Veterans Park Neighborhood Association. I'm generally in support of this project, though I do share some of the concerns that have been voiced tonight. I would like to ask for make one request here that I haven't heard. And I think it would make sense to have a traffic study done. I note that the planning and zoning checklist allows for having a traffic study done for multifamily building projects over 100 units. I also note that in ACHD's letter in response to the applicant, they mentioned that there would be 491 vehicle trips per day. And all of those vehicle trips are going to be on Arthur Street, every single one of them, because that's the only access point for the cars to park. And I think it would make sense further, given that the traffic flows used for State Street that ACHD had in their letter were from the height of the COVID pandemic. It would make sense to go back and have a traffic study done just to ensure that, one, the issues at State and Arthur for going eastbound into the city are addressed correctly. And if there are other issues found, that those are conditioned appropriately so that they don't become problems. And then the true impact to Arthur Street traffic and how that traffic runs through the neighborhood, whether it's through the neighborhood streets over to 36th or elsewhere, to be able to get out, that those are addressed and evaluated. So basically my request is that a traffic study be done, and that if there are issues found, that there are conditions to alleviate those put in place. And that's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Okay, I'll do one more call for folks online who want to testify. Okay, very good. Okay, thanks, everybody. Go ahead and invite the applicant back up for rebuttal at this time. I think it's 5 minutes going to be adequate.
Should be fine.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Chair, I'm Caleb Roop, 430 East State Street, part of the applicant team. And I would just start with, change is hard, and I get all this. I mean, we deal with this, and you deal with it all the time. I might draw attention to just like generally, we talk about sort of the issue of a shadow going over your home. What if you don't even have a home to have a shadow be cast over? That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the needs in the community of over 20,000 units over a 10-year period. You have a neighborhood local traffic problem, but what if your traffic problem is you got to commute from Payette or Caldwell to get to your job in Boise? I mean, that's like a totally different traffic problem. So when I think about these issues, I think in terms of the scale and the issues that people are facing day in, day out. And, at the end of the day, this is your property. This city of Boise property belongs to the people of the city of Boise. And we're here really to deliver as much housing as we possibly can. And it is true that, we can obviously make changes and reduce density and do different things. But, at the end of the day, the need is so great. How many opportunities does the city really have to direct and control and ensure perpetual affordability of homes? And that with the city's continued perpetual ownership of this property, they have the right to do that basically forever. And you just don't have a lot of opportunities like that. So when one comes around, I think the city envisioned initially when they acquired this site that they were really going to make this an effort to get as much housing done as you could. And so we're really here just fulfilling that mission. I mean, we started this project probably at 90 units, and then that additional site got acquired. One kind of cool thing you didn't hear about today is like along the front of the property there, we did a lot line adjustment with a neighbor and created a better parcel for the neighbor to develop their commercial spot someday, and then also square off our lot line. So it actually helped both properties. And, that's the kind of stuff we like to do, is try to collaborate with the community. And, we know this is going to be hard, but this is going to serve folks at 30% AMI all the way up to 80% AMI. I think one of the speakers mentioned just the lack of affordable housing that just is in the community. And so I would just, put those two things in play. And, we really are here. This is not our property. We didn't buy it. It's your property. We will do what you ask us to do. But at the end of the day, our mission is to try to get as much housing provided to the community and to the people in your city as possible, because your needs is so great and you have limited opportunities. If you're not going to densify here, where are you going to densify? We did a DARE and on, Fairview, and it was the most dense project being built at the time. And now you see the hospital, and now you see other plans for other projects to come. And so you got to densify where you've got your transit and your walkability and your corridors and things like that that are going to be friendly for future development and future density. So those are kind of, I know, policy things. We're happy to, if we need to kind of do different things on the windows or no balconies here and there, we can make those moves. Those are all possible. I would just ask that we're not asking for big variances here, big changes to the code, some little tweaks here and there to make this thing work. And we just would ask you, let us fulfill our mission, do as many units as we can. Don't step us down. It adds cost, and I think from a public policy perspective, it's better to get people a home than avoid a shadow. So incidentally, one other idea I had, we are programming on our podium deck some gardens. Well, maybe there's a better approach here to just say, let's just not do that. And we can take that same money we were going to invest there, and let's invest in the community garden that's next door through ongoing revenue sources that we might be able to produce. Or maybe we're going to spend $30,000 on that. We could put that in the bank and, spend monthly or annually to improve the gardens where they already exist. that are further away from our building already and will have less of a shadow. So that's the kind of thing we could also look at too, but I'll just stop there. Did you have anything you want to add, Shellen?
Just really quickly, I would say to Caleb's point, I've been doing this for over 15 years. Caleb has been doing this for longer. And these are concerns that we hear very, very often when we're up in front of the committee or the commission here in Boise, but also all throughout Western states. So these changes are hard. I just wanted to reiterate that. I wanted to say that I recognize it, but I also think that the critical issue here is the housing, and everything else I would just echo.
Okay, great. Thank you both. All right. At this point, we'll bring this item back before the commission to render a decision.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Gracious. I make a motion that item number 1, PUD 22-4 and CVA 22-2 conditional use permit be approved with terms and conditions in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Commissioner Danley, you want to kick us off?
Sure, Mr. Chair. This project, in my mind, was actually born 15 years ago when the state or the city initiated the State Street plan, corridor plan. Subsequent plans came about. I know this city and ACHD and other partners have spent a collective $1 million on this corridor. And in my opinion, it's to see projects very much like this. In addition, this is a city property, unfortunately, actually, because of what happened with Smokey Davis, a big mistake that was made, but hopefully we're actually seeing a benefit from it. Positive things, school right next door. Most AM traffic, 3 o'clock PM traffic is generated because of school activity. This happens to be a school right next to it within walking distance. Another use that's typically driven to the grocery store, that's basically across the street. If we want to get across the State Street to get the Parks Greenbelt, we actually have a pedestrian hybrid beacon right out front, which is pretty amazing. In addition to the transit operations, that this is the most successful route that this state has, which is also of benefit. I don't take lightly the concerns that were raised, however, with respect to the shade. I do see that as an issue. It's an unfortunate issue. I don't know if there's a way that we can resolve it. I do see the problems that's here inherent with the way that things are constructed, the costs, especially if we're trying to get to the affordable component of it. I really like what you just got done saying, which is, essentially working with the community on this garden, because it means a lot to this part of this city and this neighborhood. And so I think that would probably behoove you to take that action and work with them, maybe move some money around and enhance that further, because I think it would go a long way. I'm unfortunately very sad, frankly, about the shade issue with regard to the north. It's a trade-off, and it's not a good trade-off. I'm sorry to say that. I know, not everyone's going to be happy about that, but at the end of the day, I think that the benefits in this case are pretty significant, and I think therefore we should support it. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Danley. Commissioner Blanchard, any other thoughts?
I really don't have too much to add to that. I would just say that I agree that the bigger consideration here is the policy issue, and we have to get some housing in this community. I mean, every P&Z board and council across the country is trying to figure this out, and we have to take these shots where we get them. So I'm in support of the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
I support the motion and the comments made by my fellow commissioners. And I would maybe add to the public that it does sound like there are some separate concerns with the current traffic situation that's happening there. And it might be worth reaching out to ACHD to talk about adding speed bumps for the cut through areas, or or adding in parking signs on one side if you can't park on both, things like that. And also the flip side of that is, as we know, street parking actually slows vehicle traffic down. So sometimes we say careful what you wish for, because if you got rid of all the street side parking, maybe cars would be traveling quicker. So it is a trade-off, as we've heard, but that might be a direction to take some of those traffic concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Stead. Commissioner Mooney.
Mr. Chair, I'm leaning towards being not in support of this for a couple of reasons. I agree with all the previous comments from the commissioners, and this is a much needed project with great aesthetics and all the things that have already been said. But I really was tagging on to the applicant's suggestion that this is your property, and it is. It's the city's property. And I feel a responsibility that we should lead by example on that, which means that I would have a hard time in the future reading the code and administering the code as written, when in this case, I don't think it does, and specifically the variance. The hardship issue is I can't square that corner in my mind. It's the ACHD is a given, and I don't understand how we can work around that. The Vista and Targhee project that we recently saw before I was even on the commission, a 4-story workforce housing unit that was initially denied based on hardship, the variance hardship. And that applicant came back and fixed that quickly. And then it sailed through the commission and was approved in January, as I recall. And so that's the one that in my brief experience, I reflect back on that. How can we say that to a future applicant if we can't even do it right ourselves when we are the applicant, the city, working to do something right for the community? On the PUD approval, the site needs to be large enough to accommodate the use. And that was my questions about the childcare center. That's the best case parking requirement, is the 3 slots required for 3 or 4 slots required for childcare, but that's a proposed use. An allowed use is retail, which requires a lot more parking, and we're not providing it. And yet we state that if retail goes in there, then if the use changes, then the project will need to provide sufficient parking based on the new use. How would that work? How would that happen? Basically, that would be a space that could never be retail. It could only be something with a reduced parking footprint, which I think is hampering future opportunities for us, the city, since we own the land. So I'm not in support of it, I think, pretty strongly based on those 2 issues.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Mooney. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I think I'll be supporting the motion, and I was somewhat unsure. I think that Commissioner Danley's comments were very meaningful and pointed, particularly relating to proximity to the school, grocery store, I mean, things like that. It's a great location for something like this. I think this particular location is a little bit unusual with this mixed use corridor, but directly, or the C2D directly adjacent to the R1C area. I think that's kind of what makes some of this clash happen, where you get those volumes that kind of tend to clash or appear to clash. However, it is still, it and its perimeter are still within that mixed use corridor. And because of that, I could see kind of some of the adjacent properties developing to a greater volume or a greater height, becoming more compatible and kind of starting that step down in the future. And then in relation to kind of some of those streetscapes and infrastructure, I think one of the public comments was, a good point that there's some infrastructure issues, which this will be, at least for its adjacent segment, resolving, or at least aiding in resolving. And then otherwise, it'd be great to see some sort of mitigation on that north side for privacy. But I know that is difficult because those are actual units as opposed to the side units. So that may be challenging or near impossible.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Okay. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I think Yeah, I'm going to be in support of the motion as well. As Commissioner Danley said, I sympathize too with the change that this project creates along the corridor, especially with regards to the shade. And that fact, I think at the end of the day, the applicant's done a nice job getting this number of units to work on what is kind of a challenging parcel. It's an odd shape, it's an odd space. And at the end of the day, we do need the housing. And while we are, sort of breaking some eggs, to make the omelet, but I think this is a step in the right direction. And I think this is certainly what the city envisions for the corridor in general, more density, bigger buildings, and that next progression, right, as State Street sort of develops and matures. In addition to that, we have approval from ACHD. The applicant is improving the street frontages as required by that agency that manages the streets. So again, I think it's a nice product, not without its challenges, but the applicant's done a nice job to create a product that works here, and I'll be supporting the motion. Any other final comments, thoughts? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Danley to approve with a second by Commissioner Blanchard. This is PUD 22-4 and CBA 22-2 with all the terms and conditions as written within the staff report. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Blanchard?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Finfrock?
Aye.
Stanley?
Aye.
Mooney?
Nay.
Motion carries. 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, thank you all. We're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be right back. Thanks. Got Mr. Mooney back. Mr. Mooney's back. Okay, got everybody in person. All right, so let's see. Up next on our agenda, we have item number 3, that is CVA 21-59 Cole Architects at 2025 South Broadway Avenue. This is a variance to encroach into the side yard setback for parking and drive aisles. I believe,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, Commissioner Moore.
I will need to recuse for this item as my office is the architect for the project.
Okay, very good. So let the record show that Commissioner Moore has recused herself from this item. And we'll hear from staff first, and that's Jesse Lyle.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, today we have item CVA 2159, a variance for parking aisle reduction and on Broadway Avenue in a CD2 zone. And I heard that there was just a couple questions for me about the staff report. So
Yeah, that's the case. Jesse, if you maybe can give us the quick and dirty overview here, and then we'll hear from the applicant quickly, and then we can move right on into questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the location is at 2025 Broadway and a mixed use area. Here's some photos of the site. The front yard currently has a billboard and it's surrounded in auto-oriented uses. The applicant is requesting to reduce the drive aisle to 14 feet and 8 inches and the landscape buffer to 2 feet 9 inches. They've explored other options on site, such as cross access to the north. That wasn't available. And they plan to mitigate for any safety concerns caused by the drive aisle width. However, basically, there's very little parking and activity. It's going to be an office use. And they plan to put mirrors and signage up in order to mitigate for any safety concerns. And the planning team recommends approval.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Okay, we'll hear from the applicant next. Mr. Hoffman, if you want to just come up and give us any comments you might want to add.
Good evening. My name is Ian Hoffman, 720 West Ada Street, Boise, Idaho. I'm with Cole Architects. I think Jesse summed everything up. We are requesting this variance to encroach into the side yard. We are still proposing a two-way traffic in and out with all the parking to the rear of the building for future office use with it complies within the mixed use district. And then as Jesse had mentioned that one of the conditions of approval and which we accept all the conditions of approval was placing a mirror as a safety deterrent at the drive aisle and onto the street. And so we're all in favor of that and accept all of those conditions.
Okay, thanks. Great, thanks. Let's check in to see if we have a representative from the South Boise Village Neighborhood Association with us. And I do not believe we do, so we'll go ahead and just bring this back to the commission for any questions of the applicant or staff. And Mr. Mooney, go ahead and kick us off, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My only question is not related to the variance and the drive and all that. That's all great. I was just noticing the billboard in the first slide, I think staff presented there, lower left. And our comp plan is pretty clear for the variance. When you grant a variance, it will not be in conflict with the comp plan. And the comp plan is pretty clear on general design principles for community gateways that we should be visual clutter should be transitional and monument signs should be kind of the standard, especially on a gateway like Broadway coming into the city center. So I was wondering if the applicant would entertain a condition where that billboard goes away.
Okay.
At this time, we had not considered the billboard as that is an existing, as it is existing to the site. And the current landlord has a lease on it to rent out that billboard. So we had not considered that as part of this at this time, but are always happy to look at it in the future when we consider developing the project. but that is not currently at this time planned on going away. But I do understand Commissioner Mooney's points. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I got a question for staff then. So when would we get an opportunity to review that billboard at a future opportunity? Would it take complete redevelopment of this parcel? What triggers the opportunity to comply with the comp plan and clean up the community gateway?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, as this is just a variance for the parking, that's what we looked at for this application. If this parcel were to redevelop, that would be the point where we could consider some conditions about the billboard.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. I guess real quick. Oh, sorry, Mr. Hoffman, real quick for you. You don't actually have a tenant for this property at the moment? Or is it just a shell essentially?
That is correct. It's currently a residential use, and so we are seeking for a commercial use to align with the mixed use corridor and be able to be used properly as opposed to a residence.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. All right, any other questions? All right. We'll go ahead and open this up then for any testimony. Anybody in person or online like to testify on this item tonight? Okay, very good. Typically now we give the applicant 5 minutes for rebuttal. So Mr. Hoffman, do you want to? Thank you very much. We'll skip rebuttal and we'll go ahead and just bring this back before the commission to render a decision.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move to approve CBA 21-59.
Second from Commissioner Mooney.
Very good. I got a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I don't
Commissioner
have
Stead.
much to add. I am recommending approval or moving to approve based on the reasons and stated in the staff report.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Mooney, anything to add?
Mr. Chair, no.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion to approve from Commissioner Stead and a second from Commissioner Mooney. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And up next on our agenda is item number 6. This is CUP 21-55 and CVA 21-56 ALC Architecture at 1094 on West Overland Road. This is a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment on 1.14 acres in the C1D zone. And we're going to hear from Ms. Lyle again from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As stated, this item is for a conditional use permit and a variance. The subject property is located at 10965 Overland on 1.41 acres in the C1D and LOD zones. The property is currently undeveloped, but in 2016, a commercial PUD was approved with a conceptual site plan that showed a drive-up window in a similar location to what is being proposed today. However, there was a caveat that additional entitlements were needed for a future drive-up window, which is why we're here today. There was a time extension granted for the PUD in 2018, and in 2020, there was a modification to the original permit to allow for changes in the site design that resulted in the approval of a residential development for 36 buildable lots to the south of the subject site. The submitted site plan shows the drive-up window located on the east side of the building with access to the drive aisle from Questwater Lane with vehicle headlights facing north to avoid disturbing the residents of South Point Cottage subdivision. There is additional residential development to the north across Overland Road that is within this 200-foot residential setback. However, there's a 30-foot landscape buffer with existing and planned trees to provide screening. The proposed site plan shows the drive-up window approximately 150 feet from the nearest residential property. The applicant proposes one pedestrian connection to Overland and a sidewalk along the western property line. A condition will require sidewalk along the southern boundary of the parcel with pedestrian connection to the South Point Cottage subdivision and raised pedestrian connection from the retail building to Overland Road into the residential subdivision to the south. The final design and placement of the sidewalk and pedestrian connections will be addressed during design review, along with a final landscape plan, facade design, and more. The applicant is requesting a variance to the 200-foot setback, citing exceptional circumstances with the site. In 2016, there was the commercial PUD approved with the drive-up window and the conceptual site plan in a similar location to what is proposed, signaling the intent to locate this use here in the future. Additionally, the applicant plans to locate the window close to the existing commercial uses along Overland, using the building and landscaping to shield the residential uses from potential impacts. Public comment was received from the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association in opposition to the variance to allow the drive-up window within the 200 residential setback, citing incompatibility due to an increase in traffic, noise, air, and light pollution, as well as increased risks of vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle conflicts. And they would like to see more pedestrian-oriented development. In response, staff agrees with increased pedestrian connection and has conditioned additional connections beyond what the applicant originally presented. However, there are many commercial developments along Overland, and as Overland is an arterial roadway, this is an area where drive-up windows and other auto-oriented businesses are expected to be located. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of CUP 2155 and CVA 2156 with conditions, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Likes, I believe is online. Are we good to go, staff? Go. Can't see him. Okay, Mr. Likes, I think if you unmute, should be able to hear you. Mr. Likes, I think you're muted. If you can hear any of you.
I've asked him to unmute.
Okay. Well, why don't we check in to see if we have a representative from the Southwest Ada
Here we
County.
go.
Oh, there we go.
I wouldn't unmute. Sorry about that. It was just kept telling me no.
We got there. Okay.
Yes. Good evening. I appreciate Jesse's staff report. And just like to say we are in agreement with that. Is there a way I can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Perfect. Thank you. To start off, we'd like to say we are in full support and an agreement with the staff report and recommendations as part of this condition of approval. We do understand that there has been a letter, and Jesse mentioned it there, from the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association on February 17th. In the staff report, it states that we have not identified the user for a drive-through. At the time, it was not. We were told to keep that confidential. As of now, things are better off, and I can tell you that our user currently is, and it has a signed lease for that, is Baskin-Robbins ice cream. So I'm hoping that will alleviate some of these concerns for a drive-through. I know going in with just a standard drive-through, everybody thinks it's going to be fast food or something that's going to be a lot of heavy traffic. And so to kind of help alleviate the concern, ice cream is not an intensive use for that use. Most of it is walk up, which is why we have a large patio there in between these two buildings that kind of sits right there. And so as Jesse has said and staff points out, we've designed this site to minimize the effects of the drive-through on the surrounding uses. Our drive-through lane is on the east side of the site and away from the residential as far as we could get it. We also understand the need for a variance. And in this situation, it's an extenuating circumstance. There just isn't a variance out there, but there is an extenuating circumstance. And we believe that that circumstance is as stated in 2016, there was a PUD approved that showed this entire area as being commercial. In 2020, as we know, the townhomes were approved to go in there, was still leaving the front portion of this site, front portion of this whole development as commercial uses, as we see here. We've talked about in the staff report. I won't go on to read it. Staff does agree that this site is large enough to have the use. It complies with the conditions in Blueprint Boise about how it infill sites, incorporating outdoor seating, encourage pedestrian activity. In the letter from the neighborhood association, they had talked about, and this is their markup that they had sent in their letter. And I assume you guys have all seen it, but the orange line there is where they would like the sidewalk to be. In talking with staff and in the way that we had designed this is we want the connection pedestrian to go in between the buildings and down to the south. The reason we're thinking in this area here is in their design, this connection right here is their sidewalk connection right here. So the connection comes across here anyway. So to have it come over and then go up the east side of the site, a lot of extra steps to get there. So just bring them straight through and then out to Overland. Right through the site anyways would be better for us. And that's the way we've designed the site, the way we'd like to leave it. So, I mean, in closing, we agree with staff. We agree that what has been presented as far as Blueprint Boise, Boise codes for drive-up establishments in this area, our landscape plan has got some extra landscaping around that. We're screened from the pedestrians. I do want to point out, I know where staff had said we are about 150 feet from here directly south to a residential zone per se. We're about 175 feet as the crow flies to this portion. This is their garages. So 175 feet to the actual townhome on a straight shot. So it's a little bit further. We're closer to that 200 feet anyways. And so we appreciate staff and their willingness to work with on this. And we look forward to any questions, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Likes. Before we go to questions, we'll check in to see if we have someone from the neighborhood association in attendance.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Clough, and I live at 10800 West Smoke Ranch Drive, pretty much directly across from this development. I am with Southwest Ada County Alliance, and I wanted to say that we're in support of the office use or retail, but we don't think that the drive-through is suitable for the area. It doesn't follow within the guidelines. The code is there for a reason. I view it as rules, and I think that things would be so much easier for everyone in the long run if we all just stayed within the lines. They're there for a reason. A lot of time and effort and money was put into designing, and creating those codes. And it just seems like we spend so much time trying to fight that and give exceptions and variances. The city's been focused on reducing traffic and increasing pedestrian activity. And I think by putting a drive-through right there in the middle of a neighborhood center doesn't really, isn't conducive to that. They're asking for a variance from 200 feet to 150 feet. That's 25%. The city envisions 6 cars for a stack up. That pretty much reduces it to 4. And that stack up is going to go directly to the neighborhood. There's one street that goes in that has to go directly in front of the neighborhood and then turn to go up to the drive-through. That's all going to stack up and back up onto the neighborhood, in front of the neighborhood housing. They also mentioned the previous PUD that was approved in 2016. That was prior to them approving the infill development of those townhomes. So I think that the prior approval doesn't really apply. Our main concern is of course the car stacking, the exhaust fumes, and the impact on the neighborhood. They say that they created it so that the headlights wouldn't go directly into the neighborhood of the south. But what about the new development across the street? I don't think a 30-foot landscape barrier is anything. That's literally, from here to you. I don't see that blocking headlights from someone's front window. So as I mentioned, we're totally in favor of the office and retail. We just don't think that the drive-through is suitable for the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We'll open this up to questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
I had a question for staff. So I'm kind of confused what the hardship is for the variance. I've heard mention of it, but it's not like anything specific. And I'm just wondering if you can maybe elaborate on that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, a variance can be either for a hardship or an exceptional circumstance, excuse me. And I think that the applicant would be able to kind of elaborate on their exceptional circumstance a little better.
Thank you.
Mr. Likes, do you want to sound up on that question?
I can. So we believe our extenuating circumstance is when this was developed, when it was approved back in 2016. This was designed to be a commercial center, was designed to actually have more commercial between us and the neighborhood to the south. And obviously, as time went along, that didn't happen. And so they got some residential in there, which, we see that everywhere in the city right now. Is if you look at all of our applications today, most of them are for residential developments, multifamily developments. So we're going back to that original PUD, and it limits certain drive-through uses, but it doesn't limit the drive-through itself. And so we're pushing back to that, and that's where our circumstance is that we're just going back to that original PUD.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
I have a follow-up question to staff.
Mhm.
So it looks like the code reads the 200-foot setback shall be measured from any part of the window or drive-through lane to the nearest lot or parcel used or zoned for residence. That right here is 150 feet. Is that correct? Is that from the, from the window to the nearest parcel or residence?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, yes, that's correct.
Commissioner Finfrock, any follow-up questions or anything?
I think so, Mr. Chair. One more for staff. I remember when this subdivision came in front of us and there was no mention of like the commercial use or a drive-through window interfering in the subdivision. So I'm just wondering what's the disclosure process on this type of application? Like when you have a subdivision next to something like a C1 district. And I just think it's kind of unfortunate because this application has existed or the PUD since 2016. So now we approved a subdivision in 2000 and nothing came up. And so now it seems like both parties are a little bit, it puts us in this conundrum of what to do about that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock. So as time has gone on, the original PUD that was approved in 2016, I believe a slide actually that outlines this a little more. So the original PUD that was approved had conceptual plans there. There was a drive-up window proposed, as you can see on the screen. This was the original PUD. And the staff report again references the need for additional entitlements for a drive-up window. And there was a time extension in 2018, and the PUD 1943 was a mod to the original PUD. And that one was the one that was approved in 2020 for the residential uses. So that's kind of how this has evolved over time. So to answer your question, I believe that basically just the different modifications on this PUD or how that process has gone. I'm not sure if there was any kind of linear thought, I guess, between different applicants.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So one more question. If Baskin Robbins decides that they are done with the resident or with this commercial property, can it move to something more intense at a later point, or does it require it to go back through the process of planning and zoning? So say it becomes, I don't know, a McDonald's or something, like something more intense.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, yeah, the CP is for a drive-through. It doesn't limit it to the tenant at this point. There's no condition on that. We didn't know what the tenant was when the application was proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mooney, your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up on Commissioner Finfrock's question. It's probably for the applicant, maybe the staff as well. I appreciated the explanation of the 175 feet to that nearest residential unit or residential unit versus the garage. My question is, how many residential units are impacted by the 200-foot black and white reading of the code? Is it a couple? Is it 4? Is it 6? Looks like it's probably 4-ish.
Mr. Commissioner and Commissioner Mooney. Jesse, do you want to answer that? Do you want me to try and answer that for him?
Jeff, you can go ahead.
Sure. I appreciate the questions. And so I just want to make everybody clear. I know it's 150 feet from the window to the use, which Jesse has clearly stated here. We had pointed out that it was about 175 feet from here to here. I don't know, the distance of these, but I would say a 200 foot is probably somewhere in the range of 3 of these units here. It's not going to reach over to here. Like I said, it's somewhere right in here where that's going to be. These units are probably at least 20 feet wide, which, start adding up another 20, you're 180, 195, you're 200 somewhere in this unit right in here somewhere, is my best guess.
Just Jeff, just for the record, we can't see what you're pointing at. So just want to be clear about that. I think we followed you.
Okay. Well, I can't share my screen. Okay. I mean, I hope you guys, so there's a number 42 and a number 44 on those. I think it's a 41 and a 42. So that's kind of where I think that 200 foot's gonna fall in. Yeah, it won't let me share my screen. I think it says you guys have control over it still.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I got a question and follow-up for staff then. So for staff, since the code is 200 feet, do we have an overlay that shows 200 feet?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I do not have that overlay. Sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Danley.
All right, I'm going to try to thread the needle here and make my question. I think I got this. This is a question to staff. So make sure I'm straight here. Go back in time, I think it was 15, 16, whatever it was. The whole parcel, right, came in front of the commission for a PUD and was approved. And at that time, it was all for commercial uses. It got renewed a couple of years later. Then the southern part of this parcel came back and was approved for residential. But the northern part has now since been carved off. And that part is what's in front of us. But now we're claiming that the residential that was approved is what's in conflict for the variance for the drive-through. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is the applicant's citation.
So the hardship is the fact that the development to the south, which was their own property, was developed residential. And now because of the spacing requirement, there's not the 200-foot buffer between drive-through to residential. That's right.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, excuse me. Yeah, that was the exceptional circumstance cited.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for any testimony. Any takers in person? Anybody sign up? Sign up? Oh, Ms. Clough from the Neighbor Association signed up, so we took care of that. Okay. Anybody online that would like to testify?
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Keith.
Uh,
Go
Can
ahead. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Marissa Keith, and I'm at 3279 South Cloverdale Road in Boise. I'm also the president of the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association. And so we're opposed to a variance for this drive-through. If we are able to build more pedestrian-oriented commercial areas, then drive-throughs should not be considered part of that. The southwest part of the blueprint Boise specifically calls for pedestrian-oriented developments in the SWCCN 1.9, which is the Overland Road and 5 Mile Road corridors. It says to encourage a more pedestrian-oriented development pattern along Overland and 5 Mile roads. And so drive-throughs next to residential, and especially those so close that they require a variance from code, we do not feel is compatible. No, nor does it meet that goal of Boise Blueprint. And within that residential area, there is also a future playground right where those two drive aisles intersect, the one coming off of Overland, and then you'd have to turn the corner to get to the drive-through. There's a playground that's going to go right there. And so depending on what goes in for the drive-through and how popular it is, there could be a lot of traffic going by that playground, which can be a conflict for those children, as well as the increased emissions that they will be exposed to. And as one commissioner said, it might be an ice cream store today, but we don't know who the tenant might be in the future. And it could be a much more impactful, have a much more impactful use for those residents that will live in that area. So our board is very interested in how this development can increase access to the 5 Mile pathway, which is on the south side of the residential development. We would like to see create safe and convenient access to the bus stop, which is on Overland, just to the right of this commercial development. We're not opposed to the commercial aspects of this development, and our board welcomes more business opportunities in Southwest Boise. However, we want to make sure that they are compatible and safe for current and future residents, follow Blueprint Boise goals for the Southwest, and as well as protect and enhance our access to current pathways and public transit. And I would say that this commercial or this residential development didn't come before you all that long ago. It was a very, very long evening, that one. And we all had our opportunities to speak about how that might impact our community then. And there was no opposition about how it might affect a drive-through window. That wasn't mentioned at that time. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else online? Sorry, I lost my window. Okay. Anybody else online that'd like to testify? Okay. We'll go ahead and bring this back before the applicant for a little rebuttal. Mr. Likes, a few minutes for rebuttal.
Yes, and we understand. We have heard the neighbors. We've read their letter. I understand where they're coming from. Our new owners. This is not the same owners. This has been sold off from everything else that has gone on in there. We get it. We understand their concerns. I do want to point out that we are providing per Blueprint Boise We are promoting infill development near mixed-use activity centers, and a few of the principles there of supporting pedestrian connection to adjacent uses and incorporating outdoor seating to encourage pedestrian activity, as well as our landscaping treatments to screen the surface parking from adjacent uses. As we've stated earlier, we do have an overland connection, which then gets them to the bus stop. As shown earlier, we do bring that south, the center of our two proposed buildings there, directly right into that development to the south. And so we just appreciate it. And we appreciate the work with the neighbors. I think we can make this work. Like we stated, this use is not an intensive use for a drive-through, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Likes. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Finbrock.
I will, I move to approve CUP 21-55 and CBA 21-56 along with the recommended and standard conditions of approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve and a second. Commissioner Finbrock, you want to kick us off with some discussion on the topic?
Yeah, I think that this original application came in front of us in 2016 and the residential followed it. And so although I see that the code is pretty strict on that 200 feet, I think that the whole intent of this property, or at least the property where this application lies, is that it was going to be commercial. So I think that the fact that we decided to develop residential next to it following the commercial intent, I mean, I think that it leaves it open for a little bit of hardship on that original applicant.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
I'm not going to be in support of the motion. I would support the approval without the variance, but I do think that, having idling cars 150 feet from my residence would be an issue. For many of our residents is an issue. I support commercial in this space, but I just don't see the drive-through variance as a fit, and I don't see the development of residential as the exceptional circumstance. I think that a little bit to what Commissioner Danley alluded to, but even if it wasn't their property, we approve PUDs during a certain moment in time, and to revisit this after an additional development has gone on, I think we have to look at it not based on something that's happened in the past, but we're looking at the current lot, the current property. So I don't see that as an exceptional circumstance. I do think, that we keep hearing from the applicant as an argument that it's a low use drive-through, but as we've heard from staff, we know this just from our own experience, we don't approve projects for the tenant, we approve it for the use. So for this, we would be allowing drive-through, period, not just for Baskin Robbins, but for any kind of use. It could be a Starbucks or a McDonald's or something like that. And I just think that 25% reduction on the variance is a big deal when it has to do with something like health and the air pollution that might be generated with residents so close nearby.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Danley, and then Commissioner Mooney will come to you next.
2 points. I will not be in support of the motion. To me, it's pretty clear the timeline here. To me, it's self-inflicted. I don't see proving of a hardship based on how this process and this project has unfolded. You go from people who live in that area who may want to go to the north by foot, as proposed without the drive-through would be mixing with potential automobile traffic once. You put the drive-through, it's 3 times. And to me, that's just, asking too much to get from A to B. Further, I'm not frankly in supportive of the development itself, frankly, because what we just approved on State Street, highest and best use on a busy corridor next to two busy arterial intersections and a grocery store, and we have single story, retail that to me just doesn't fit. I think this should be much more significant than what is being proposed. I understand the history of the project, but to me, we're really missing the mark on an opportunity for infill, a good quality infill that could be even better than what's being proposed. So at least for the variance in particular and the motion on the floor, I can't support it.
Commissioner Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm not in support of it either for the reasons already stated. The applicant, the residential preceded the application. And so just as I said on the previous project that we discussed on State Street, the applicant should consider the existing conditions and then comply with the code. And it's pretty clear that that's not the case here. And I think those future South Point Cottage residents will appreciate the protection that the code provides them and from this drive-through establishment.
Mr. Chair, just based on my other commissioners' comments, I will withdraw the motion because I'm on the fence as well, if it's okay with the second, because I could go either way, and I think they've made good arguments too.
Okay. No curveball there. Would it be better? I'm going to check in with legal real quick on that. James, do you think it'd be better if we just take the vote and have it fail, or? Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. First, let's see if there's any more. Well, let's go ahead and take the vote because I think we're gonna have some more discussion coming. So, all right. So right now we have a motion and a second to approve CUP 2155 and CVA 21-56. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
No.
Schaefer,
No.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
No.
Benfrog,
Aye.
Danley,
No.
Mooney,
No.
okay, that's 5 opposed and 2 in support. Motion fails.
Fails. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move that we approve CUP 21-55 and CVA 21-56 with the exclusion of the variance.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I've got a motion to approve without the motion and a second to approve without the variance. Commissioner Stead, would you like to start us off with some discussion?
I feel like I've already stated what needed to be said. So I'll pass the mic.
Okay. Any other discussion on the topic?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I agree with the analysis on the variance. I think with the order of operations here, it was approved when there was commercial behind there, residential got put behind there. And now it conflicts. And I think that's pretty straightforward. And the order of operations were different. Perhaps commercial did go in behind there, obviously would meet that original PUD, but it doesn't. So I feel that those findings are not what they were when it was originally approved.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. I'll sound off real quick. I'll be in support of the motion as well. I love the commercial use right here. I love that there are the townhomes immediately adjacent to it, but I do agree that the townhomes to the south, sort of, that's the existing condition, and that now the drive-through does not apply or is not within code due to the proximity of those residences. So I'll be in support of the motion as well.
Mr. Chair.
I think Commissioner Stead may have some more for us here.
I just wanted to clean up my motion.
Okay.
So it would be to approve CUP 21-55 and deny CBA
Gotcha.
21-56. Sorry, I got excited.
Yeah, no, I understand. I assume the seconder of the motion is in agreement with that.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion to approve CUP 2155 and to deny CVA 21-56. Commissioner Mooney has his hand up.
I'll be in support of the motion, and I was just going to encourage the Boise Pathways Plan is an integral part of the discussion from the neighborhood. And if the drive-through is not going in, then I'm hoping that something could be worked out with the planners and the neighborhood and the applicant to ease a nice connection from Overland down to 5 Mile to that new proposed canal pathway.
Great comment, Commissioner Mooney. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Again, this is to approve CUP 21-55 and deny the variance CVA 21-56. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Stanley,
No.
Mooney,
Aye.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thanks. I think we're going to take another quick 5-minute break. No? Yes? Yeah. Let's take a quick 5-minute break and we'll be right back. All right. Are we back? We got Mr. Mooney back online. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started again. Up next for us is item number 7, which is PUD 21-70, Glancy Rockwell Associates. Projects at 1428 North Etheridge Lane. This is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 16 multifamily units on 0.81 acres in a C2D zone. And from staff, we're gonna hear from Sabrina Mortensen.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the item before you is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development on 0.81 acres located at 1428 North Etheridge Lane in a C2D zone. The parcel is currently vacant. The applicant proposes to construct 3 multifamily buildings containing a total of 16 dwelling units, which will act as a transition between the single-family homes and duplexes to the east and west and the commercial uses along Fairview Ave to the north. The proposed density is 19.8 units per acre, where up to 43.5 units per acre would be allowed in the C2D zone. And as outlined in the staff report, the project complies with all PUD requirements. Each unit will have 100 square feet of private open space, and the project is also located in close proximity to Florence Park. Sidewalks will be installed along Etheridge Lane and internal to the site, along with a pedestrian connection to the adjacent parcel to the east, which is anticipated to redevelop in the near future. In order to reduce impacts on the adjacent single-family homes to the southeast, the easternmost building has been situated towards the northern end of the site. Fencing and landscaping will also be installed in order to further minimize any potential impacts. Agency comments indicate that the project will not place an undue burden on public facilities in the area. The project is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and will be subject to subsequent design review in order to further ensure compliance with the citywide design standards. The planning team recommends approval of the conditional use permit, and I will stand for any questions.
Thanks, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. James Glancy Rockwell Architects, 1257 River Street. We're fully in support of, appreciate the report, Sabrina's comments. Sorry, I can't see the report there. As she said, we're well below the density, the allowable density. I know our client basically is concerned. We have a 2-story building on the west end for the transition from the neighborhood. So there's 2-story homes in the neighborhood. Wanted to kind of relate to them on Etheridge. Going internal to the site, we did 3-story, which are well below the height limit allowable, which is 45 or 34 to the mid height of the roofs. And I'm aware that the project to the east of this is going to be all 3-story as well. So we think we fit fine, well within the neighborhood and the plan. And happy to answer any questions if there are any. Otherwise, appreciate your approval.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Glancy. Next, we'll see if we have someone from the neighborhood association with us. Yep. Okay. It's the West Boise Neighborhood Association. Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, Mr. Cockrell, you signed up, so.
All right, well, yeah, Chris Cockrell, 10460 Saranac Drive, and I'm the president of the West Boise Neighborhood Association. Our association split into 6 different residential districts. So I guess 4 testimonies specifically, I targeted our Cole residential area when we were asking for comments and input from the community. So just giving you some background on, this is input that and concerns that come from specific individuals that live in that neighborhood. I'm going to go just walk through real quick what the concerns were that came up. And obviously a lot of them are probably pretty typical. And then I'll talk to some of the ones that I think are addressed, and then some of the ones that I don't think have fully been addressed or potentially have some more potential for consideration. Traffic, parking, connectivity in the area, impacts on wireless coverage due to the larger buildings, compatibility and transitioning, management plans, and criminal activity in the area. So as far as traffic and parking, I really don't see a huge amount. I think this has dropped in size from what it was, and they're what, 2-bedroom units, and it does seem like that's pretty close to reasonable for how many people are likely to live there, how many cars are they going to need. So I would have said both traffic and parking are at least something that can probably get moved past. And I know there were some alterations, right, with the connectivity as far as getting pedestrian traffic, so potentially can get through. I know that was something we really appreciated seeing as a consideration. I think that'll add a lot, you know, having the park there and both sides of that undeveloped area. I think that'll add a lot to the community. Obviously, management plans, will there be on-site or off-site management? That's not really something that planning and zoning can handle too much with, right? There's not a lot of repercussion, but that was a concern that came up in discussions, is putting, you know, most of the people in the area are homeowners, and, you know, as you start to put in rental properties, and you get more transient nature in what you see, right? You see a rise in criminal activity, right? You see parking theft and other things that, you know, become hotspots in those areas pretty heavily, where you tend not to see those same trends, I would say, in, I don't know, not all residential, but I would say a lot of residential, that tends not to be the same concern. So there was some concerns that would tie to, you know, what does that bring to the neighborhood, you know, and management, how that would be covered was something that was a concern to the residential folks that live there. And also surveillance was something that was brought up. You know, I know in this room, there's 9 different cameras. If you look around, there's very good surveillance. And just saying, hey, if you're going to move higher density residential into this area, right, which right now I would say it's not really, it's still pretty low density, right? It's not as obviously low as some of the areas, but it's still definitely not apartment complexes. So surveillance is something that they were interested in. You know, hey, is that something that the developers kind of looked at? We hadn't really heard anything one way or another on that. Impacts on wireless coverage, right? There's a large cell phone tower that's right there adjacent. And that was something that you thought, hey, you're going to put a 3-story building in there. What does that do to coverage for communications, right? How does that impact our networks? And, you know, specifically wireless is what I would assume. But again, I don't know. I haven't seen any studies that kind of lay out what kind of impacts that would or wouldn't have. And I don't love I'm an electrical engineer, but I'm not a communications engineer, so that's not my strength. So I definitely am not the one that would want to speak to something like that. I think the last 2 items that were brought up, compatibility. You know, when I look at this area, I don't see any 3-story uses, right? I feel a little inadequate because I just saw you approve a 5-story complex next to a single family dwelling. But when I look at all the other uses in this area, I don't see 3-story homes, right? I don't see 3-story anything. I don't see, well, there's a huge cell tower that's there, and that's definitely over the height of the 3 stories. But that is another concern. You know, it was mentioned that the transitioning on the west side of the property, 2-story units, and then up to 3-story units. But it fails to mention that on the east side of the property, there's also a single family home that's adjacent, right? And so you're going to put a 3-story apartment complex looking into somebody's backyard. And that's not something that, you know, I'm very excited about. And I know the neighbors, you know, didn't really view that as a great plan moving forward. I mean, there are a couple things that I think of. I know I was trying to I'm obviously not an expert. You guys probably understand the zoning code a lot better than I do. You know, I try to separate that there's differences between land use and zoning and that those aren't exactly the same concepts. And I know I started reading the code and it reads, concentrate tallest buildings or tallest portions of buildings away from adjacent single family homes. Provide gradual decreases in building height so that new structures are comparable in scale to adjacent single family. And then it talks about 1-story differences. And I realize that that's not applicable here. Looking at the code details, it does have an exception where it says, well, it actually doesn't apply if it's significant new development, redevelopment. Right, when you look at Blueprint Boise and what that shows, because this is adjacent to the commercial strip, I guess, or I don't know, it's not commercial, it was something else. The whatever the area of stability or change is called, right? It is technically in that. So I mean, obviously it is allowable, right? But it's something that when I look at this, I think I don't think it's going to make the same type of neighborhood as what the people that live there would like it to look like. And I think that's a lot of what planning and zoning is meant to do, is to look and say, hey, what is that vision? What do we plan this to look like? So maybe it's a deficiency on my part. Maybe I need to work more on getting more plans nailed down and putting more restrictions in line to either change different parts of our, not the code, but at least the stuff that applies, maybe the zoning in that area, to try to get it where I think the community would be happy. But my observation is it's not just this area where I've seen developments go in, but there's other areas where I tend to feel the same way. As I look at it, I think, oh, well, if we really didn't want that there, maybe we need to do something a little different to make that happen. And obviously that's not on you guys. I do want to at least take a second and thank you for listening to everybody rant. You have a thankless job, and I acknowledge that. And I'm really impressed with the city staff. I know when I've worked with them, I'm a pain in the butt, right? Like totally. I ask for things that are probably unreasonable. I complain. I'm very political, so I like to whine about things. And yeah, I've got really helpful advice. And I, like I said, I'm impressed at how apolitical the staff is. So when they don't have to do that, they do a really good job being professional, and I appreciate that. I think that's a really good thing to have in government. So, any questions?
Great, thank you, Mr. Cockrell. Well, maybe questions in 1 second. I guess we're there now. So right now, this second. Yeah, so any questions from the commission for the applicant or staff or the neighborhood association?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So question for staff. So with residential that's located in a commercial zone, if there were commercial to develop, say in the commercial portion to the north, that kind of C2D zoned area, they would have an increased setback because this is a residential use, even though it's in a commercial zone.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, that is correct.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
One additional question, unrelated, but so for building height, and I know these are well within the C2D zone, but just in relation to the R1B zone, for a building with a ridge line similar to this one, where would that kind of building height be measured? Is it midline of roof line?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, our code does define building height as being measured to the midline, which is the 34 feet for the 3-story buildings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Okay. Keep it short and sweet. Anybody in person or online would like to testify on this item tonight? Okay. Keep on moving. Then, Mr. Glantz, if you want to take a few minutes for rebuttal, this is your opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be short, sweet, everybody. Yeah. Some of the questions, we kept it lower density intentionally because the owner's concerns about the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. So we tried to not go to the maximum. Our pre-application meeting, the city asked us to go to a higher density. We're allowed to go more. And as we all know, the city wants more density. The parking, we have a little more parking than the minimum, but we felt that this neighborhood needed it. The units are all 2-bedroom, 2-bath. They're good quality. As wood frame, I don't believe there's any wireless cell phone interference. The criminal act, I don't see there's any issues there. The management is offsite. It's a smaller development, 16 units. It's more in a R1B or R1, I guess R1C, R2 density scale. So we're really much lower density than allowed. There's no planned surveillance. We've had surveillance on larger projects is typical. I would assume if there were any issues, that would be brought up by the owners if they ever had any issues in the future. And again, the 3-story were placed internally. I know there's one single-story home to the southeast. We think we're a good transition between McDonald's, which is the high use on the north, and the single family. But the single family home in particular, we tried to move as far away from it as possible. It allowed for more screening. The decks on there, we have a solid screening on the decks. So it's going to give privacy to both parties, but it will be definitely a change to their habitat. We don't have shadowing. We're on the north side of them, so we're not going to have any sun issues. And the project that's just coming into the east, I know, is 18 3-story townhouses. So it's just going to be coming before you. So I believe this is going to continue. Any questions I'd be happy to answer or.
Okay. I think we're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back before the commission to render a decision. This is PUD 21-70.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve PUD 21-70 with all the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
Got a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a second from Commissioner Stead. Commissioner Moore, discussion?
Absolutely. I think the earlier project was brought up a few times, and I think that, this is another example of that C2 zoning adjacent to an R1 zoning. And I think this is kind of a buffer potentially for something like that. Some more density could be appropriate here. It is in a commercial zone, but it could reasonably act as a buffer too. In terms of the height that's proposed actually complies with the R1B zone. So I don't see a conflict there. The biggest, I guess, heartache that I get is just because of this residential use going here, it will require that additional buffering in the adjacent commercial when that parking lot, it looks like in the future develops. There will be some mitigation that will be required there. So a little bit of heartache there, but I think as a buffer for an R1B, I think it's appropriate.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Stead.
I will be supporting the motion as I did with my second for the reasons stated in the staff report, and I support Commissioner Moore's comments. I did want to just take a moment to address the pretty offensive and discriminatory comments on renters that we heard tonight from the neighborhood. Renters are not necessarily transients or criminals, as you stated. We have surveillance in here mainly because we have residents and commissioners online who are attending and participating virtually. And also because we've been threatened pretty regularly from homeowners, not renters for the most part, I think. Renters are most often contributing members of society. So I guess I'll leave it at that, but I support the motion.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Stead. Any other discussion, comments? Okay, I'll sound out real quick. I'm in support of the motion as well. It checks all the boxes, meets all the dimensional requirements. As the applicant pointed out, they could have gone for much more density. I think this is a nice happy medium for that transition zone, as Commissioner Moore stated. I think with reference to the earlier project, I think there's a big difference though between this one and that one, and that project was located right on the transit corridor, right on the main, what we foresee as a more high density corridor in the future, whereas this one's set back a little further, from Fairview and Milwaukee. So I think they've struck a nice balance here with the density and the use and treating this as a transition zone with everything that's happening in this area. So I'm in support of the motion. And with that, we'll go ahead and call the roll. We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Moore and a second from Commissioner Stead. This is PUD 21-70. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Blanchard?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Finfrock?
Aye.
Danley?
Aye.
Rooney?
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thanks. And let's see, I guess we're last, not least, item number 9.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner Danley.
I will be recusing myself from this item due to a longstanding relationship professionally with one of the people who is going to be testifying, who can be very persuasive, and therefore I feel it necessary to recuse myself.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Danley. Let the record show Commissioner Danley has recused himself from this item. Have a good night, Commissioner Danley. We are CAR 21-47. PUD 21-69 and SUB 21-63. This is Rodney Evans and Partners. The address is 2314 South Broadway Avenue. This is a rezone of approximately 1.55 acres from R1C to R2D. An associated conditional use permit for a planned residential development containing 17 dwelling units, and then a preliminary plat. And we're going to hear from Mr. David Mosier from staff.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the applicant is requesting a rezone from R1C, single family residential, to an R2D, medium density residential design review zone located at 2315 South Broadway Avenue. A conditional use permit for a planned residential development containing 17 dwelling units and a preliminary plat for residential subdivision comprised of 17 buildable lots, 1 common lot on approximately 1.14 acres is proposed. As you can see from the aerial photograph, the neighborhood is a mix of residential uses, which includes single-family duplexes and multifamily developments to the west, with office and commercial uses located along Broadway Avenue. And as seen on this slide, the requested R2 zone is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods since the adjacent properties are zoned R1C to the west and north, with commercial and office zoning to the east and south. It is also compatible with the comprehensive plan as it designates the site as mixed use on the land use map, within which the proposed R2 zone is allowed and anticipated. The R2 zone will also act as a transition between the commercial uses along Broadway Avenue and the single-family residential neighborhood to the west. This is the site plan before you. The development consists of 15 attached 3-story townhouses and 2 detached single-family homes on 1.14 acres. The project design includes protecting the existing historic single-family house on the property. The development consists of 3 groups of 5 attached townhomes, 2 of which are oriented towards Melrose Street, and the 3rd townhomes group is located interior to the site. In addition, a new 2-story detached single-family house will be located along the north property line, and as previously stated, the historic house will be protected. Reduced interior setbacks and lot sizes are also requested with the subdivision. The project provides 2 parking spaces per unit with guest parking, and the amenities proposed include a large amount of open space surrounding the existing historic house, drought tolerant landscaping, and there are 2 parks in nearby and close to the project. As per the late correspondence memo, the commission should have received, a new recommended condition of approval requests an increase in the tree size being planted on site to 2.5 caliber inches. This will ensure tree mitigation requirements are met. In summary, all required findings for the rezone and the planning development have been complied with. First, I would like to note that the planning team did receive a letter of support for the project, but it came in late and could not be forwarded to the commission. However, several neighbors did express concerns with the project in terms of traffic along Melrose Street and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. The main issue with the traffic is that Melrose Street is a narrow roadway and there will be congestion at the intersection of Melrose and Broadway Avenue. Although there is capacity on the adjacent roadways to support the project. The issue expressed regarding compatibility is the project does not transition well with the adjacent property. Please note that the property design includes similar setbacks with the adjacent properties to the north and west with landscape screening. And as you can see up here, the house up in the corner is providing a 15-foot setback from both the north and west property boundary. In addition, the project is also providing extensive landscaping along the street frontage, in particular Melrose Street, and additional land or trees will be required to be planted along Broadway, although there will be class 1 because of the existence of power lines. Finally, a concern was expressed that the project is not eligible for the density bonus as per the multi-living use standards of the development code, since the townhouses are not defined as multifamily buildings in the zoning ordinance. However, the planning team contends that it is eligible since it is adjacent to an arterial roadway with a transit route. And to answer the neighbors' concerns regarding the townhomes, I would note that multifamily living use standards of the development code are to be applied to all new multifamily developments. And according to this development code, multifamily developments can be comprised of different housing types. For example, section 1163.2C of the multifamily living use standard specifically states townhomes are an acceptable housing type within multifamily developments. I would also note that other sections of development code consider townhomes to be multifamily. Normally, design review is exempted from single family housing. However, townhomes are required to get design review approval. But in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the rezone, the planning development, and the subdivision. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Semple, thank you for your patience tonight.
Yep. Good evening. Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. Yeah, I want to thank David for his staff report, as well as the rest of the staff that's helped us navigate this process. We are in agreement with all the conditions of approval contained in the staff report. Just wanted to highlight a couple things about the process that we went through to get to where we are. The rezone from R1C to R2D, initially we had approached the city requesting a rezone to R3D. The desire was to get 17 to 18 units on this property, and R3D, while it would provide for well more than that in density, it got us to that 18 units. During that conversation, the city said, well, you're on a major transit route, you would qualify for transit bonus of up to 20 units an acre. We're 1.14 acres, so we could get 18 units that way. During that process, we identified that there were some issues with setbacks at that northwest corner adjacent to existing single-family residential. A couple of them are townhomes. I think there's a duplex there. We did adjust our plan to provide a 15-foot setback to that structure. We actually exceed the setback on the north side. It's closer to about 20 feet from there. So we dropped 17 units. When we look at that 17 units on the 1.14 acres, that gets us to 14.9 units. If you look at the raw density of what we were proposing, R2 without any transit bonus allows 14.5 units an acre. So we're 0.4 units above without utilizing the transit incentive. And so we feel like we're more than complying with density. The R1C zone around there to the north and to the west does have a variety of housing types in there. There's also some LOD zoning to the south that does have an apartment complex on it, multifamily. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's 12 units, but I can't remember that. I didn't write that one down. So another big part of this project, the home on the site right now was designed by Turtelot and Hummel. It's one of the first homes designed. It's the same architecture firm that designed the state capitol. That is not lost on us. We are preserving that home. We've talked with Preservation Idaho multiple times. We met with the State Historic Preservation Office, trying to explore some credits through federal for the retention and renovation. Unfortunately, because of the work that's done, we don't qualify for the federal program, but we are still going to maintain that home. There's an addition off the north side of the home that was added at some point that will be taken off. And then a covered porch off the back that was added at some point, which we would be removing as well. The facade, the historic facade of that building will not be changed. It has original river rock from the Boise River that was brought there and placed on the columns. There's some really cool detailing of the actual facade and the structure that we look forward to preserving and enhancing with the renovation to be sold as a single family residential home again. There were some concerns voiced in a letter about the maintenance of that historic structure and the potential for it to be demolished in the future. Any historic structure can be demolished. It doesn't preclude it just if it's historic. But by placing a design review overlay on this site, it adds an extra level of protection with the new design or the new demolition code that's within the city of Boise. As well, that's on top of the fact that the building is obviously over 50 years old, which would require a certificate of zoning compliance to demolish anything there anyway. We will have to go through that process to take down some outbuildings on the site. And at that point, I feel like the team could provide some additional information about how we're retaining the existing facade. I know there were some conversations about additional protections. I don't know how that works, but we could definitely explore that. I'm not sure if the historic committee weighs in on this because it's on the National Historic Registry, but we would welcome their input as well. Let's see, to talk about the impacts of this site. So just to point out a couple numbers, 28% of the site will be dedicated to the lot that contains the existing historic home. So more than a quarter of that 1 acre plus will be dedicated to that site. That allows us to maintain a lot of the historic trees that are on the site. We will be cleaning up the landscaping immediately adjacent to the structure because it is pretty overgrown. It has been occupied as a single family residence, but there's been some maintenance letdowns, I'll call it. 35% of the site will also be a common lot, including landscaping buffers on the west and east. They're outside of that historic lot. The drive aisles, the mailboxes, bike racks. So everything that's within those areas will be maintained by the HOA. So there will be some pretty heavy protections for those to be maintained in a positive way for the neighborhood. 42% of the site is landscaped areas. That includes buffering along Broadway. We talked with ITD, which was contained in the ACHD staff report. They basically just said we had to rebuild sidewalk and get a permit from them to do it. It's currently 5 foot attached. We have decided to detach that sidewalk, make a 5 foot detached sidewalk and provide a 10-foot landscape buffer there or landscape strip for class 1 trees, which is required by ACHD to be 10 feet wide. It also doubles as a protection for the existing gravity irrigation lateral that runs parallel to Broadway there. The multifamily code does allow for a mix of unit types, but it doesn't require a multifamily building like an apartment building. It allows small lot, single family detached, which we would consider the Northwest home a small lot. I think it's 1,200 square feet. A standard single family home and townhomes can all be are allowable unit types within the multifamily code. 2-car garages are provided for every townhome unit, and we will be building a new garage for the historic home that would be detached. The home in the northwest corner will have 2 surface parking spots on their lot. There will also be 5 on-site guest parking spots, 3 towards the front and 2 more towards the back. We did not count Melrose Street for any on-street parking to count towards our requirements. Although if I remove 50 feet of the approach towards Broadway on Melrose, that still leaves us with approximately 175 linear feet of curb, excluding our curb return entry into the project. So that can accommodate, I don't, off the top of my head, it's like 6 cars, I believe, on the street there, maybe even 7. I believe that they'll restrict our ability to park too close to the intersection of Broadway and Melrose. We will have to do detached sidewalk with curb gutter along Melrose. It widens the street on the north half, so it will improve the condition slightly. There is some curb gutter sidewalk on the south half further towards the west as you go. And so that we feel like we're accommodating plenty of traffic, plenty of parking. I know there's some concerns about privacy as well. As you could see on our landscape plan, we have a pretty substantial landscape buffering that includes street trees along Melrose, as well as class 1 trees in the front yard and additional shrubs in there. We are going to also be working with a timber harvest company so that any large caliper trees that have to come down because of the development, if they're evaluated as beneficial to be used in future woodworking projects, they will be harvested, and so they won't be chipped or cut into firewood. There's some really nice catalpas and some stuff like that that I've already been in contact. They've reviewed the trees, they're interested, and so I'll be meeting with them again. Yeah, I guess that really kind of sums it up. We feel like this is a really great transition from the Broadway corridor into the single family neighborhood. These are all single family residential product. And even if they're rental apartments, I think it'd be a great project too.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Okay, go ahead and see. We have, let's see, Mr. Fritchman online. We have anybody from the Southeast Boise Neighborhood Association with us? So we have Ms. Adams has her hands up online. Do we know if she's representing the Neighborhood Association?
I do not represent the association, no.
Okay, sit tight then, please. We'll get you get your testimony here in just 1 minute. Go ahead and bring this back to the commission for any questions of staff or the applicant. Commissioner Mooney.
Mr. Chair, I got a question for staff. I guess I'm a little hand wringing over the protection of historic properties, not having much experience with that. And the process seems kind of undefined. We have an applicant that states it's a National Historic Registry, and we've got some public input that's concerned about that as well, but we don't have any staff input. Does this normally get a arts and history staff review so that to inform our deliberation?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, the National Historic Registry it's a volunteer, so we don't really send out to the to art and history or historic. It's not a historic district, so they wouldn't look at it either.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Ben, I assume these are all going to be addressed on Melrose?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, the existing single-family home historic will maintain its Broadway address. The remaining properties will address off of Melrose, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I've got one for you, Ben. You mentioned I see the gravity line on Broadway in your detached sidewalk. You mentioned class 1 trees. I don't see them on the landscape plan. Did I miss that?
Mr. Chair, they were not added. I was still having conversations with the irrigation district about whether they'd let us put trees in there.
Gotcha.
Because of the proximity of the root system to the pipe. They indicated it's a fairly small delivery line. And so if, when we get in, I mean, we're intending to add them. If we get into construction and there's some issue with that, we would address it by moving more trees behind the sidewalk to comply with the tree requirement along the street,
Gotcha.
as is typical.
Gotcha. So then I assume when you get to DR, We are going to DR, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so you'll have those, you thinking you'll have that resolved by that point or?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Moore.
And Ben, this is a question for you. I don't know if there was any conversation with the designer of the buildings as to incorporating some of those historic features from the existing house into those townhouses?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, we're looking at a way to bring some materials and kind of simplify the design so it talks to that farmhouse look. We're not going to put Boise River Rock veneer on them. We don't want to make them look exactly the same. There were some pictures in the packet that show some of the outbuildings, and they're very, very simple. That's kind of where some of the design came from. There's an added chimney on one of the facades that was really to kind of dress up the one along Broadway. So we intend to make a few changes, but yeah, we're looking at that to try to draw a little bit of design from. I'm not, but the designer of the homes are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blanchard.
David, is Broadway is a gateway corridor? Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that is correct.
Okay, so I'm assuming then that everything was, I probably just glanced over that. I was just wondering about the siting of the building, if the gateway corridor at all affects the way buildings are sited along Broadway.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the design review standard, or at least the citywide design guidelines do require to have entrances front onto roadways. And I do believe the end unit there for the townhouse does have a door facing it, along with they're keeping the traditional historic house.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, very good. We'll go ahead and open this up for testimony. We'll start online. I guess we've got a hand up. Mr. Adams, I think.
Yes.
Please start with your name and address for the record. And you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jules Adams. I live at 1111 West Melrose Street in Boise, Idaho. And just had a couple of concerns about the project going in. One was, I think maybe he already addressed it. He said he was going to be widening the street up there on Melrose and Broadway, putting in a sidewalk. Right now, there's some bushes there on the south side of the property that the bushes go right where a sidewalk would go. And so I would assume those bushes would be coming down. So right now, both properties that are on each side of Melrose have bushes that exceed their property lines that make Melrose really narrow at that corner of Broadway there. And from our house, we see almost daily people getting hit by cars. We're trying to walk up Melrose up to get to on the Broadway, because there's a major bus stop routes there. There's school routes there, and people going to and from school. A lot of jobs, a lot of traffic coming up down the street. The street used to have 8 houses on the street. Now it's got like 24 over the past 5 years. And so the traffic is getting really bad. And it'd be nice to see that intersection widen, or that street widen with sidewalks. The other concern is with the irrigation system. I know that property has an irrigation system on it. I would like to know how that was going to be handled. That I would not think that all the other new properties on that location would be not eligible for the irrigation. And the one that was there, they flooded the entire property with the irrigation system while they occupied the residence, and used up quite a bit of water. As you know, we have a water shortage in Idaho here now. I don't know if they're planning on doing xeriscaping, but that would be nice to see some xeriscaping going in versus green lawns. Those are my 2 major concerns, is just with the traffic up there and the narrow streets currently, how are they going to address that, and how they're going to address the water situation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Anybody else in person tonight that would like to testify? Okay. Well, Ben, I guess you're back up for rebuttal.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners. Yeah, to address Mr. Adams' comments and concerns, Melrose Street will be improved on the north side along the property southern boundary. It will remove those shrubs. It does widen the pavement. Then there will be an 8-foot planter strip with street trees and then a 5-foot detached sidewalk all the way down the Melrose frontage that will tie into rebuilt sidewalk along the eastern frontage of the property along Broadway. We'll comply with all the vision triangle requirements along there too. So this will definitely improve the safety at that intersection, at least on our side of the street with our property. And regarding the irrigation system, in discussions with the district, it is a very small lateral. It really doesn't have an adequate water right for this property, which is probably why they took all of the water to flood it when they did irrigate it. So I envision that we will be applying for a PI waiver for the subdivision, and then each individual home will provide their own system off of their potable water meter. The majority of the lawn on this property is associated with the historic home. It's part of that historic setting that we're trying to maintain as much as possible. That is pretty heavily shaded by a lot of trees. So we'll redesign that system to make sure that it's efficient, and then all of the beds with shrubs and trees will be drip irrigated. So it'll help with water reduction of water use. And I would stand for additional questions.
Yeah, I think we're all set. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring these back before the commission to render a decision. Just a reminder, we are recommending on the CA, on the rezone and on the plat.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve PUD 21-69 and recommend approval for CAR 21-47 and SUV 21-63 with all the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Terrific. We've got a motion and a second to approve. Commissioner Moore, discussion?
Absolutely. So the reason for my support of this project is, there's a historic house on the site, and I honestly had no idea that it was a Hummel and Tortolot building, which is really cool. Just being able to elevate that building, preserve it, and then be respectful of its setting. And I think residential surrounding that building is appropriate for the site. And just to kind of continue to let that building stand out. Because the River Rock, I'm familiar, I drive by the building often, so I'm very familiar with that. I think, typically on Broadway, I might like to see some sort of commercial or something like that, but I do think that for this particular site, the site plan is appropriate.
Any other discussion?
I don't have a whole lot to add, Mr. Chair, but as I seconded, yeah, Ben, nice work. I mean, there's been an awful lot of not real great infill in that neighborhood, to say the least. And so I think, these improvements to the neighborhood will really elevate the whole experience there. As I'm looking around at the map, it's like, oh goodness. So anyways, yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a motion to approve PUD 21-69 and to recommend approval of CAR 21-47 and SUV 21-63. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ed,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. We are adjourned.
But not Kevin.
Yes, Kevin, thanks for everything. Good luck with your next endeavor. We'll see you around.